Okay, we are good to go, Madam Chair.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gloria. Thank you so much for being here. And before we begin, well, let me call this meeting to order at, anyone have a watch?
It is 15 past, 16 past.
10:16 in the morning on February the 20th, 2024. I'd just like to take a moment to apologize for being a little bit late and to thank everybody who's new for being here, and to thank our two guests that are in the audience. Thank you all for coming. Tell me more, Daryl, would you introduce our new folks that people haven't seen before?
Sure.
I'm going to squint to see the.
We've got joining us today for the first time is going to be Mr. Daniel Parrish and Ms. Quita Pryor. Mr. Parrish he's the public member from the LMFT board. And then Ms. Pryor is the public member from the social work board.
And I'm thinking that's top corner right on the screen. I can hardly see. Yes.
Ms. Pryor is.
Hi, Ms. Pryor.
Middle on the left.
Middle. Oh, there you are. Okay, gotcha.
And Mr. Pryor is upper right.
See that better? Yes.
Now, who knows what the public is seeing, where they're at on their screen, but that's what it is for us here in the room.
Nice to see you. Welcome.
Thank you.
And of course, one other new face is Mr. Robert Romig, the new Deputy Executive Director here at BHEC.
Oh, okay. I said hello and wasn't sure who I was saying hello to. Thanks for being here. Okay. So the meeting is called to order, and I can see that we have a quorum. Do we need to do a roll call?
We can just acknowledge that all BHEC council members are present.
Thank you. And let's start with public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, unless there's a question. And I am used to having, gosh, I got so used to Zoom that I'm used to seeing the list of folks.
Yeah, we'll start with the people that are out here in the audience right now. So
sure.
If either one of you would like to make, Ms. Martin, you want to come on up, give us public comment?
Morning.
Nice to see bodies. They call my chapter, the Dallas chapter, they call us the Alamo because I think we're the last chapter person. So I just have a brief comment, really. Kind of jotted it down, actually.
Sorry,
by the way, I'm Sandra Martin. I never remember to do that. I am Sandra Martin, and I'm governmental liaison for Christian Counselors of Texas.
Thank you.
So we've had an increasing interaction with entities from other states, and that's great. It's both a blessing and it is also concern for us. We like the extra opportunities to counsel. We're concerned about Texas standards and quality. Been concerned about that for quite some time. When CACREP made an appearance, Christian universities and colleges were very concerned about that for lots of reasons, also quality and standards. But I remember Dr. Taylor made a statement at that time. He said that we can be better than CACREP without being CACREP. And I agree with that. We agree with that. We're concerned about the pressure that's being put on the psychology board. I haven't heard the latest on that, but we're concerned about that kind of pressure. I won't use the word that's in my mind. I was told not to. So we're concerned about the pressure that's being put on the psychology board. And in an earlier LMFT board meeting, I think this was a meeting last year, probably even as early as February or March, one of the LMFT board members expressed a concern about our standards being diluted in an effort to interact across state lines. And so when I saw in the agenda about the potential or possibility of national regulatory licensings, disciplinary measures and standards and things of that nature, that nationwide caught our attention, that would be of great concern for us. We don't have answers and solutions. We don't really even have suggestions right now, but we do have concern and we are paying attention to that. And we do support you guys and Texas system of regulatory measures for their counseling and mental health issues. And we don't want to see quality down. We don't want to see mixtures come in that just don't suit where we are. So we're praying for you, praying for those issues, and we're watching them closely, and we're encouraging you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Martin, before you leave, I'm going to plead ignorance because I'm not a professional. I represent just the everyday Texas citizen. What is KQEP? The acronym that you used.
Sure, Hallbauer had asked that.
good.
KQEP is
KQEP.
Chair Daryl. You're Director Daryl, aren't you? Not sure.
Yeah, I answered much worse.
You.
Dr. Taylor, can you explain KQEP?
Yes, ma'am. So KQEP is just an accrediting body that accredits counseling programs throughout the country. It is now required for universities to join them. It has had a large movement over the growing decades to become sort of like the national standard for what is required for a university to be accredited to provide a counseling program. We do recognize that, as we also recognize everything else that is accredited through the Department of Education and SACS-COC. So
it's uniquely for academic institutions?
It is exclusive to academic institutions, yes, ma'am.
It's very expensive for schools to be accredited by them, very expensive. And so some of our smaller colleges would have dropped their counseling programs and lost them. And they have standards that we're not entirely in agreement with. And so there's a huge storm, what, about 10 years ago, maybe, I think, or 7. They're still around, but a lot of schools are not accredited by them. Had to have been at that point in time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Director, may I pass these out before I make a statement?
Yeah, bring them up here to me and I'll hand them out for you.
There's 2, but I'll put them opposite maybe.
Okay. Are they clipped together?
They're paper clip, but there's 2 so this would be one.
Each one packet?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Right.
2 packets per. Up in there. I knew you were coming, Mrs. Gloria, but
Thank you.
I think there is. If not, I've got them in the box.
Okay.
I'll wait till the director finishes. Thank you, sir. All right. Good.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Good morning. My name's Cody Taylor. I've attended multiple of these meetings, either in person or Zoom, and I've been over at the Capitol. And like you said, traffic is never ending. So it took me a while to get here. I was hoping to be here a little sooner. So what you have in front of you, I spoke at the last meeting in the LPC. It's specifically to this, right? So I'm here, I have a right to assemble with y'all, I have a right to petition the government, and I'm being sued by one of your own. I'm being sued because I have brought forth complaints. I have brought forth the information. I brought forth the things that I am legally obligated to do when something happens in a case. Family law, for that matter. What you have is a petition. The one that I filed was an original, and then I amended it. It's about 37 pages long, and then it is their original answer along with their countersuit, which is for defamation. This is all public. This is in Jefferson County. How egregious that a licensed professional counselor who does not wish to have any of this brought to light now sues a public member for protecting their child and themselves. My fundamental right as a parent is to protect my child, to raise them and to rear them. How egregious that a child was stolen through a legal system that protected them rather than the child and the parent relationship. So I have extras in the box. I was hoping to have more people here, but I understand Zoom allows a lot of people to function outside of this meeting. So there's extras, Director. I'll leave them with you so that you can pass them out. But I noticed last time I spoke of this on the screen, because I was on Zoom, that a lot of people, it kind of jumped at them. They may have never heard this. Me either. The Texas Citizen Participation Act actually allows the protections of freedom of speech. The First Amendment is not just freedom of speech, but it's right to assemble, it's right to petition, it's right to bring that up. You have now been brought this to your attention. Under 882, you have an obligation to look into this. One of your own is seeking to basically put in a gag order so that I can no longer bring anything to you. How egregious. So empowerment, right? This board has vested power by the state and by the people. One of those things is what we're doing right now. I get to talk to you. I get to see what y'all are doing. Transparency. I'm bringing this to you that you would have never seen before. I'm tired of coming here. I'm tired of having to be a part of this process, but I'm willing to do it because that's what a parent does. That's what the person is able to do in our state and in our country. Empowerment, citizens engagement, rules, statute, law reviews, complaints, and then it comes down to just execution. I understand I have about 30 seconds. This is where in family law we have failed, I think, as the board sits here today. Marriage and family therapists and then LPCs who are actively engaging in family court cases are not doing the service that they are here to do. There's always a way around. As an opposed to follow up the members, I'm sorry if I may have 15 seconds. There's always a way around. It seems like there's always a protection for the person who holds the license, as opposed to getting to understand why a public citizen who's not a lawyer, just a parent, is bringing this to y'all's attention. Let's stop finding a way around and let's start getting dove in as to why this is happening. This is across the state. I went to a meeting or seminar this weekend.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We do need to be there.
Yes, sir. I'm available at any point. I will be filing my other complaint today. So.
Okay, so we've got other attendees, virtual attendees with their hands up. I'm gonna unmute you so that you can talk. Dr. Sartor, do you have public comments you want to give?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Terry Ann Sartor, and I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor in private practice, a counselor educator, and the liaison to BHEC for the Texas Counseling Association. I am also grateful for the opportunity to serve on the BHEC Rules and Standardization Committee. TCA appreciates the council for allowing stakeholders to make public comment, to express concerns, and we have a strong appreciation for the council and individual member boards. When new rules are being adopted, TCA does encourage the council to take public comment after discussion of the said rules, if any, and before acting on the proposed rule changes. Referencing the consideration of the change to 882.2 General Application File Requirements, we welcome the addition, which will allow for the council to rely on verifying information from another jurisdiction to ensure mental health professionals coming from other states are in good standing prior to receiving a license in Texas. This can allow for a more time-effective process and can further assist in meeting the mental health needs of Texans. TCA would like to thank the council for their work on 882.23 and acknowledging that counseling takes place where the client is located in this state. Additionally, TCA supports the BHEC adoption of 882.28, which allows the mental health professionals who have gone beyond the minimal degree requirement to be recognized by having their highest degree earned displayed on their license as related to the applicable license. As mentioned in the prior BHEC meetings in August and October of 2023, this ensures consistency with TAC 681.49D and TAC 882.31. TCA encourages continued conversations concerning parity for mental health providers based on specific accredited degrees in addition to the license type. Lastly, TCA supports the Texas State Board of Examiners of Professional Counselors decision in the council's amendment to delete the requirement that an applicant must receive a passing score on the NCE or National Clinical Mental Health Counseling Examination within 5 years of the date of application. Removing this requirement will further assist in eliminating barriers for those seeking licensure as an LPC associate and further promotes rule consistency with other mental health licensing boards. TCA appreciates the efforts taken by BHEC, the executive directors, licensing board members, and staff in highlighting issues and laws to support the mental health needs of Texans. To the members of BHEC and all licensing boards, we appreciate your diligence in working together to promote consistencies across licensing board rules. Your hard work provides clarity for licensed mental health professionals, the staff, members of BHEC, the individual licensing boards, and Texans who seek out professional mental health services. We truly appreciate and respect all the work of the volunteer boards. Thank you for listening to comments, and we appreciate your service time and dedication.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Sartor.
McGregor, we're getting feedback whenever they're talking. Can you remember how we got rid of that last time? Mr. Francis, do you have public comments you want to give?
I do. This is Will Francis. I'm the executive director of the National Association of Social Workers, Texas and Louisiana chapters, and I thank you all for the opportunity to speak today. Just a couple of things I want to bring up. I'm going to continue to put in a request that public comment be open when rules are discussed at the BHEC level or at the board level. I think having public comment in the beginning and then not allowing engagement when it comes to actual decision on the rules does a true disservice to the ability to people who are actually practicing to participate. And so I will continue to ask that when rules and when anything that is going to be voted on by the council as it relates to rules happens, that you all allow public comment to come in and see if there's anything that helps shape and make those rules really ultimately better and really driven by the people who are in practice, the people who ultimately you all serve on through your boards. The only other thing I want to mention is that you'll all be talking about BHEC Rule 882.23 today, and also Social Work Rule 781.323. Those do not align, and I am much more in favor of the BHEC Rule 882.23 than the one for the Social Work Board. I would prefer 781.323 not be passed, especially since it doesn't align with the BHEC rule, but that ultimately the BHEC rule itself, which allows really for one jurisdiction to really govern telehealth and really, I think, takes a much more realistic approach to what services look like in that space, is the better rule. And so my recommendation is for 882.23 over 781.323. Thanks to you all for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. And just do remember that we are not the only opportunity for professionals and public to weigh in on. Each of the member boards are represented by 2 people on this board and serve on their own. Thank you so much.
Ms. Kimball, did you have public comments you'd like to give?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, everybody. So I'm so glad CACREP was brought up. Again, I'm making, I guess today's the last push effort for this PhD thing, which is not a requirement for an LPC. It is an elitist move, which CACREP promotes. You have to have a doctorate to teach. So now every university can only have professors with doctorates. Now masters, which are usually the people that show up when the doctorates don't, cannot teach anymore. So PhD does not make you a better teacher or a better counselor. It is not required for the LPC license. Therefore, the administrative dollars should not be focused. And I don't care if they pay for it independently. There's still time and effort that goes into it, and it is a distraction. We need to, there's just a shooting last week. We need to work with government agencies and list, mentally ill people, schizophrenic people, so they can't buy guns. And we need a better focus. We've got kids killing themselves every day. This is just such nonsense. We need, CACREP is just an accrediting organization. It's not government regulate. It's just some people who got together and said, you need to take these 7 classes. But buried in it is now you cannot learn about Jesus Christ, who actually saves people. But anyway, that's my bent. Also, with the discussion, we need to be discussing after every rule that's introduced, after you guys discuss it, we, the public, the practicing LPCs, need to have a word, because you are regulating our license. And before you pass any more rules, shouldn't you be reviewing the 400 rules already in place to make sure they're relevant for today? We have a lot of mental health problems. Giving a PhD person an advantage for payment, one of the board members said $30,000 to $40,000 payment advantage over master's people that are actually working with people is it's just not right. It's just not right. And that is not why we're in this industry. We are here to help people. And this is so off focus. So I'm hoping today that you do not make that final decision. I know it sounds great and you've got all your PhDs pushing it, but there are other doctorates that matter. And it's just divisive. It's divisive among our peers. Anyway, so that is my plea for consideration today, that you just kill that and start focusing on what is already in play, because things are getting worse, not better. Thank you.
Mr. Crum, did you have public comments you wanted to give?
Well, sir, I sure do. This is Philip Crum with the Association for Mental Health Professionals. And regarding the item 5G on the agenda, regarding the quadrennial rule review plan over the course of time, we would like to strongly request that during the overall rule process, the newly implemented CE renewal requirements will be reconsidered and rolled back in their entirety, and the cultural awareness requirement will be rescinded. Regarding item 6B11, I believe that this change request that Rhonda was just alluding to add a newly acquired PhD designation to their licenses from the LPC board, and given the facts that a PhD is not currently required for licensure in the state of Texas. Number two, counselors are not currently prohibited from marketing themselves as PhDs. Third, insurance and EAP companies require a copy of a PhD diploma to justify increased payouts, not a copy of the counselor's license. And by the way, nobody wants to print out that license and hang it on their wall for public display anyway. So what are we arguing about? As the council chair herself pointed out publicly a while back, this will take BX staff and resources away from the core functions of processing applications, complaints, and other requests. And finally, a great many licensees with master's degrees, and you just heard from one, see this as an unnecessary move to devalue their professional designation. The argument that seems to have carried the motion at the board level was, quote, well, I just want it, and what's it gonna hurt, end quote. I don't think that argument should be applied to any change request for any board ever. And I sure hope this council doesn't think so, or we may just have a bigger problem than egos driving rules changes. I thank you for listening.
No phone callers, so that concludes public comment, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your input. That takes us to 4A, the performance measures and calculations for fiscal year 2024.
Yeah, the one thing that I won't go in detail about it, but the one thing I would point out to the council and the public is just the average time for processing apps, and the average complaint resolution time continues to improve. For apps, it's now under 30 days. We're looking at a little over 28 days, 28.16. And the average complaint resolution time is at 240. So those are good numbers, trending in the right direction. That's what we want to see. So that's kind of really all I have to say about that. I did include on the performance measure calculations, I gave you guys for comparison purposes the same calculations from fiscal year 21 in the same quarter. So you could do a quarter for quarter comparison, and you can see the very stark differences in that, the drastic improvements that we've made, just in case anybody kind of forgets where we came from. Sometimes it's good to look back and see where you came from.
Absolutely.
So there's a pretty stark contrast there. And of course, the board budget materials, nothing surprising there. Again, under item 4C, I have begun including the Tim Spear runs a monthly licensing master list for us to kind of give us a running update on what our numbers look like. I'll be including that in all our board packet materials going forward. You can kind of see our numbers as they ebb and flow, but there's not a lot of ebbing. There's a whole lot of flowing in our licensee population. There are really only two areas where our licensee population is contracting, and that is in the LPA and the LBSWs. The rest of the areas are expanding. So not really sure why on the LBSWs, but on the LPAs, I think I know, but I have some inkling. But I think on the LPAs, it has to do with insurance reimbursement. A lot of them are not eligible for insurance reimbursement. So that license is not as lucrative as the LP, something they could go for. The LBSWs, I'm not really sure on that one. I don't know if Chair Brumley has any insight in that, but not trying to throw him into, okay.
No.
Next item is going to be the under 4D, the complaint procedures. This is something that Patrick and I have implemented to kind of, okay, so we've got really two priority levels of complaints. We've got high priority and regular priority level. One of the things that Patrick and I realized is within the regular priority, we need to be able to prioritize, do sub-prioritization in there. We want to make sure we're going after those complaints whose license is about to expire, because we don't want them getting away and us losing jurisdiction. And so we've created a priority system within the regular. Now it's just by policy, but we've created a priority system within our regular priority complaints to make sure that we don't lose jurisdiction over somebody before we get to prosecute the complaint. Now I will tell y'all, coming forward, you're going to see, we're going to probably have a rule change brought back to you next go around. Mr. Romig has already kind of paid for himself in that he developed a solution to that problem, a rule solution to it. So Patrick and I were both pretty excited about it when he developed that. So we're going to be bringing that back to you so that we can kind of avoid this whole situation of losing jurisdiction over somebody. It's what you get when you bring somebody in who thinks outside the box. He thought outside the box. And so we've got a different solution coming up. Chair Hallbauer, you got your hand up. I've just been rattling on.
Daryl, that's okay. Just a quick question. Regarding the performance measures, do you have a target goal for how quickly for a licensure or a complaint resolution? It's great that they keep getting better. Do you have an end goal in mind, or is the goal just always keep getting better?
30 days was my goal on the applications. So
we've met that.
Yeah, anything below that is gravy.
Good.
On complaints, I would like to get us to 180 days. Now, I will tell you, I don't know how realistic that is, because when you look at the performance measures, about right now we're resolving 60% of our complaints in less than 180 days. That means that remaining 40% is what's taking us over up to the 240. Those are going to be complex complaints, take a lot of investigatory time. So I'm not really sure how realistic my goal is. I know Patrick and I and Alfonso have talked about that extensively, about whether I'm being a dreamer or if it's realistic. I don't know what to tell you right now, because we've made some changes with the changes in the prioritization, and we've made a few changes we've added like an additional category for complaints. We've just made a few changes where I'm not sure I'm going to be able to predict where we're going to go based off the data we have right now. I think we're going to have to go a little bit further so that I can get some good, I can call it predictive validity about our complaint resolution time. But I don't know. 180 days is my goal. I just don't know how realistic that is right now.
What is the limiting factor? Is it staff investigation time, or is it just the number of complaints? I mean, what would be keeping you from that 180-day target?
Patrick, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there are two things that kind of kill us on timing, and that is the back and forth whenever you have counsel and you're trying to schedule ISCs hearings. That clock is running that whole time. So that kind of cuts against you, is just the natural scheduling issues you run into when you're in a litigation scenario. And then two, when stuff does go over to SOA, it takes an immense amount of time to get stuff cleared from SOA. And so and the clock's running against us on all of those. And so that is where I see the two biggest problems.
Yeah, I mean, SOA is probably the biggest. If you ever have to litigate anything, SOA is the biggest issue. I would say if you could get something filed and back from SOA within 6 months, you've done it quickly. So that's a fast turnaround. Oftentimes it can take much, much longer. So that's something I don't know that we really have any control over. Because again, once we file at SOA, it's not fully in our jurisdiction, our control. So other sides can file for continuances. The date that we request is not the date we always get. And we're lucky, typically, I would say, it's 2 to 3 months out from, we ask for a hearing date. It's from the date we ask, it's maybe 2 to 3 months, depending on their
taken
schedule.
in isolation, we're actually performing as a council and as an agency better than many others.
Outside forces slow us down.
How long has it taken for the ISCs to get on the books?
For Psych Board, takes a bit longer because y'all have that 3-member panel, whereas the other boards do not. And so it's harder to schedule the 3 of you. So I'd say that Psych Board is probably the most difficult to schedule. But that may change a little bit because I think at the last board meeting, didn't we move to
They changed
instead of having dedicated panel members where we then have to work around your schedule as the panel members, we can now pluck whichever members are available for that. So that will help a little bit.
Yeah.
But invariably, the more people you involve, the more difficult it becomes to schedule it.
Yeah. For example, like this week, Thursday, there was a conflict with one of the other members and I'm filling in. So, but that I wasn't filling in until last week.
So do they use 2 professional and 1 public or some formula like that?
The Psych Board has to have, they have to have a public member, an LSSP member, and then either an LP or an LPA.
Okay.
So you got to have, because they've got like 3 different license types they're covering. They've got to have one basically. They got to have somebody on that panel that's of that license type that's at issue. Okay. And then a public member as well.
Is that their choice?
That's their choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it used to just be set. So like, if you're on vacation or something, then it's like you got to schedule after that. So now we're kind of filling in. So
it's still faster than the way we used to do it. Of just wait till the board meeting and everybody shows up. That was that was not fun at all.
That was 4 months. Or 3 months. That was like up to a 3-day trip for board members to be down here. Sometimes 2 days of ISCs and then a day of board meetings.
Yeah, that's the way social work was before we came over here. We had Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yeah.
It
was highly inefficient for all parties.
And wasn't any fun either.
Yeah.
It's just not fun sitting in meetings that long. So, but anyway, on the complaint procedures, that's kind of where we are there. And Chair Hallbauer, hopefully that answered your question.
It does, Daryl. Thank you. It's not a big deal, but I would support if we could categorize the types of complaints so that the measurables are more in line with a minor complaint getting measured on one by one time frame and a major complaint getting measured on a different time frame. But it's not a huge deal. I just, as much of the data, it seems like a few things really skew the data when you have just, especially a SOA matter, apparently. But no complaint here. I just wanted some clarification.
Yeah, the outliers definitely affect the average heavily.
And if there was a way to separate it so that we could measure similar types of complaints against each other, again, not a huge deal, just curious.
Okay. We can definitely take a look at that. That's what we've got Mr. Romig here for. That's one of the reasons we brought him on board, is to kind of expand our bandwidth to be able to look at some of these things. Next item is going to be the Q1 enforcement report. It's under 4D is where you'll find that. It's just a typical update we give you guys of where everything is. Nothing out of the ordinary on it. Let's see, of course, 4E is all the agreed orders and dismissals. They kind of speak for themselves. If there aren't any questions there, the next item is going to be 4F, the SIPAC update. I'm going to hand that off to Patrick. The one thing, Patrick, I would ask you just to remind them, kind of tell them what all your positions are with SIPAC so they know how we're represented.
Sure. Just real briefly, there's up to 41 enacted jurisdictions, and actually 5 states actually have pending legislation. And shockingly, California actually has some pending legislation that recently got filed. So it's pending because New York filed some back in 2023 and they still are pending. So we'll see, but I'm surprised that actually legislation was introduced in California because we didn't really sure that they were interested in joining, or at least they signaled they weren't that interested in joining. But this last meeting in November, I was elected as chair of the executive board. So I'm also chair of the rules committee with SIPAC. So instantly starting to get pulled into more meetings now. So, but it's interesting. So, and it's nice to have a seat at the table.
And I don't want anybody. Nobody's ever expressed any concern, but one of the things I think it's important, and one of the reasons I always kind of encourage Patrick to do that is I think it's important that Texas take an active role in these organizations like SIPAC that it's a member of. You don't want to be a passenger in those types of entities. You want to be in the driver's seat if you can be, or at least be taking an active role. So Patrick's been doing that. Assuming. I mean, someday I think probably counseling and social work compacts will come online. When that is, I don't know. So members of the public, don't get your hopes up. I didn't say they were going to come online or if they were going to pass. I just said I'm kind of hopeful that they will someday. So, but when they do, or if they do, just rest assured that, kind of our outlook on that is Texas needs to take an active role in it and be an active participant, not just a passive passenger in those things. So
agreed.
The next is going to be the report on the Children's Mental Health Strategic Plan Subcommittee. And for that, we've got Miss Janie Stubblefield, who is a professional board member on the LPC board. And she is our delegate to that subcommittee. So, Janie, I guess we'll turn it over to you to give us an update on what's going on.
And not before we say thanks for your service.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for trusting me to represent in this way. So the Children's Mental Health Strategic Plan Subcommittee, really long name, has been meeting for a few months now, and we are this current season going through a series of presentations from stakeholders. We have completed 8 of these presentations from the Texas Child Mental Health Care Consortium, Family Health Services, state hospitals, Texas Workforce Commission, the Texas Organization of Rural and Community Hospitals, the Texas Juvenile Justice Department, and the HHSC Substance Use Programs Planning and Policy, specifically about prevention and behavioral health promotion. There are an additional 9 presentations that are scheduled. Again, these are stakeholders from across the state that are providing mental health services to children and youth. And so that is really, I think we have probably about another 3 weeks of those presentations to get an idea of what we have in place today and what different agencies are providing for children and youth in our state, to then be able to identify what are some of those gaps, areas that we need to recommend that the governor's office do some pointed opportunities to fill those gaps. I provided Daryl with a little bit of the timeline of what the committee is expecting to complete so that they stay on target to have that report to the governor's office by December 1st of 2024. So we've got work to do, but we have rolled up our sleeves and we're trying to get it done. Thank you.
Thanks so much. That's terrific work. Mr. Hallbauer, do you have anything to add?
I don't. I would want the council to know that you can have the utmost confidence in Janie to represent us well. She's on top of all of this, and she's doing an incredible job, and I appreciate everything that she's doing.
Thank you, Chair Hallbauer. There was one thing that I did report at the LPC board meeting that I just neglected, and I had shared with this subcommittee the workforce survey that BHEC completed. And I feel like, Daryl, you were in your team were way ahead of the curve in collecting that data for us. So thank you so much for having that at the ready.
I think that when we talk about Texas being active, I think that Daryl is underselling himself and underselling the work of this board or this council. Sorry, I'm used to board members and I had a meeting last night. I'm still in yesterday's mode. What I want to say is that this council, from my perspective, continues to take a leadership role, and that leadership role is reflective of what our state should be for the rest of the country. So I appreciate all of your work and all of yours as well.
Janie, is there a chance that the data from the workforce survey is going to make it into this plan that gets submitted to the governor's office?
I don't know that answer. We have another subcommittee meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
So.
Great. Thank you. Janine, go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's all right. Number one, thank you so much, Janie, for doing all this work. It takes a huge amount to go and attend those meetings. So thank you so much. My question to you is, will we ever get a chance to see any of the questions or the data that you guys are looking at? We don't have to give input on it, but will we ever get a chance to see kind of the questions that you guys are tackling?
So I think the short answer is yes. I'm going to look at my timeline here. So we'll be looking at the draft in May and June, and then for review, revisions, and approval, July through November. And so I think in a few months, as the report begins to come together, that there will be an opportunity. And if you anybody just lets me know if you're looking for specific information, I'll see if I can pull that and highlight it in upcoming reports. Happy to do that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Janie.
Thanks, Janie. Appreciate it. Next item up is going to be on 4H. It's the it's the final auditor's report from our recent SAO compliance report. Got, there were a few things in there, a few issues that the auditors found. Nothing, nobody's in jail over any of it. We've already taken the corrective action on the issues that the auditors found. The very first one right out of the gate that they found was, we're not doing NPDB background checks on each renewal that and technically that is what the statute says, is we've got to do an NPDB check on every renewal. That is physically impossible for us to do.
What does that stand for?
National Practitioner Data Bank.
Got it.
We make everybody, whenever they come in, whenever they get licensed, they have to do an NPDB background check. We cannot afford to subscribe to what they call a continuous query, which is like a running background check. That's about $250,000 a year is what that costs for our licensee population. So what I've told the auditors we would do is, when a licensee is selected for audit, they are now going to have to undergo an NPDB background check. So they will have to submit that along with proof of their continuing education. That's kind of the compromise there, which just financially and personnel wise, we can't do a check on everyone. And candidly, I got to say, for the most part, our licensees are pretty well behaved. We don't take a lot of action based off of what we find in NPDB. So there's just not a lot of problems that get a spotlight put on them from NPDB. So, but it is a resource nevertheless, and it is in statute. So we're trying to comply with it as best we can. Unless there's any other questions about that report, I'll move on. But items I and J are just the AFR, the annual financial report, and then J is the operating budget. Those are just standard budgeting reports that we have to file. I'm just putting them out here for the public and for the council for y'all's edification. Item L is an executive summary of the complaints that we have referred to the Office of the Attorney General for prosecution. Now, the reason this is in here, and this is not in the public meeting materials, because it's technically just about a pending complaint. The reason that this is in here is I don't ever want to file a lawsuit or initiate litigation without you guys knowing about it or knowing what I'm doing. Because anytime you send something over to the Attorney General and you're saying, look, we have done everything we can do at the agency level, we now need you to take, and the only thing the AG can do is really seek injunctive relief, file a civil lawsuit. That's really about what all they can do. But before we, get us involved in any kind of civil litigation, I just want to make sure that you guys know what we're doing and what we're referring over there. Sometimes things we refer over get resolved and we don't, nothing ever comes about of it. But this case that you got pending here, this is something we could not bring to a final resolution. It was beyond our power to resolve it. So we had to turn it over to the Attorney General to handle that. And it really passes beyond our control also at that point. We no longer have control over it once they take it. Now, I don't think they've actually done anything on that case, Patrick. Okay. And
no, nothing more done.
We don't have any control to make them do anything. It's just a request that they take action. We cannot direct them to take action. But anyway, it's just an FYI. I just want y'all to know what I'm sending over there so that you have some idea of what we're doing. The next one is M. The only reason it's in here is just an FYI. I had cautioned, I had talked to y'all before about the Tingley versus Ferguson case and how it could be a watershed change for agencies if the court sided with the LMFT that had sued, I think it's Oregon or Washington, I can't remember now, had sued their state. Basically, it dealt with a conversion therapy ban and whether or not that violated the First Amendment. In the Ninth Circuit, where this case originated, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically a conversion ban is not speech. It is a prohibition on conduct. And that's why it was kind of going up to there's a split in the circuits. You got the Ninth Circuit that says, no, that's fine. States can ban conversion therapy. And then you got, I think it's the 11th or the 4th Circuit over on the East Coast that says, no, that's protected speech. You cannot. So you got a split in the circuits. And I was thinking that the Supremes may take it, but they denied cert in this case. So we are still, the Fifth Circuit has not spoken on this subject yet, so we don't really know where they stand on it. Practically speaking,
will they speak on it? I mean, is it automatically referred to them?
No, there has to be a case that actually makes its way up to it, which means we would have to be either, we don't have a conversion therapy ban on the books, either in rule or in statute. So I don't know if there's anything there for us, but the only reason I bring that up is because these big cases like this, if they can be watershed changes, like the North Carolina Dental Board case. These things are really big deals, and you got to watch them because they can change the entire course of the regulatory landscape in just one opinion. So that's the reason I bring it up. Chair Hallbauer, you had your hand up, I thought.
You answered it. I wanted to know what the Fifth Circuit position on this was, because frankly, I was too lazy to look it up for myself. And so I was wondering if you could let us know, but you did. So thank you.
They have not tackled it yet.
Are they likely to?
I'm hoping it's not from Texas. If they take it up, I hope it's one of the other Fifth Circuit states that does it, because I don't want my name in the law books any more than what it already is. Okay. Any questions about Tingley versus Ferguson? That issue won't show back up on the agenda. It's done. They denied cert, so it's done. N is going to be. This is where we've updated our classification system. I can't remember, it seems like a couple of the boards or some board members had wanted to know, can we identify the number of complaints that deal with supervision or supervisor issues? And we had never really tracked that specifically. So we added a new classification now so that if a complaint comes in, say a supervisee complains about their supervisor coming in, I don't know, just acting a fool or doing something bad, then that complaint would be classified under this new topic of supervision or supervisor. And so now we can start tracking the number of complaints that apply to supervisory issues or concerns. We hadn't done that before, so that's something we're doing now. That's the only reason that's in your packet. O is something that I hope the public enjoys, because we have now implemented confirmation emails when your renewal is successful. Previously, you just had to look on the license verification page to see if you'd successfully renewed your license. Now you will get an email. You will also get a letter in your secure message box in the online licensing system saying, hey, you're good to go. Your license has been successfully renewed. You do not get anything that says your license has not been successfully renewed, though. So, that's going to be something we'll take a look at. I don't know what we can do about it, but we'll take a look at, again, fresh eyes. we'll take a look at it and see what we can do on that area. But hey, this is a step in the right direction, folks. Now you know for sure that your license has been successfully renewed if you get that email.
As long as it doesn't start with "you're out of luck."
Yeah. Strategic planning efforts. So we haven't gotten official notice yet, or the instructions on what I call it strat planning. But I always start strat planning in the year prior. So we started collecting the strat plan survey in 2023. I will tell y'all that one of the things that Mr. Romig will be handling is the strat plan for the agency. I am handing that task off to him. We don't have a timeline or anything right now because, again, like I say, we haven't received official instructions on when it's due or anything like that. So I don't have a timeline to give you right now. Robert, do you have anything you want to add on that?
Just that in the packet, you got the responses that we got from the survey. Don't feel like you have to read through all 700. I will be preparing a summary page to sort of highlight the big ticket items of suggestions people are making. And we will be talking about the rule review process later, but given that they're happening around the same time, I fully intend to use both processes to inform each other. And hopefully where we identify, I expect we will identify some things in the rule review process that are not rule problems, but are in fact statutory problems or monetary problems or operational problems. And if we do, we can use those to inform our strategic planning.
Thank you.
Any questions on strat plan?
Thank you for summarizing it. That's going to be nice.
It's a big project. Strat plan is a big deal.
Yeah.
I will say, looking at this survey responses, I don't know that it's a huge measure of you don't want to take too much from it, but the 700 responses is significantly lower in terms of survey responses than past years. The last time was 2 years ago was 800 something, 860. But before that was in the 1500 range.
Yeah.
And so certainly if one measure of success is how many people are upset and complaining, fewer people are responding to the survey, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Especially not if it's by 50% or more than.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So next item up is, if y'all will remember back in, gosh, it had to have been June of last year, we discussed beginning the process of securing a vendor to do online CE management, an online CE management program. And the council directed me to prepare an RFP or a request for offer, request for proposal, to see if there were basically open the bidding process up to vendors. So we did that. I've included the RFP in your packet there so you can see what was submitted. And I've also included the questions that we received. Now, we haven't done the responses to the questions yet. Those are due, I think, at March 1st, somewhere right around there. I'll get those done. The only reason I'm bringing this to you is be prepared at your June meeting. That's when I'm going to schedule you to decide, who you want to go with, what vendors have applied, and who you want to go with as far as who's going to handle that for us, if you even want to do it. Now, there's nothing that says you have to do this. You may get the vendors back and you may say, well, I don't know that I want to do it now. And that's fine. You're not committed to it, but just kind of be ready, because that's when that vote will be, is in June. And of course, if y'all are not comfortable doing it then, you can always say, well, I want to think about it some more, but I'm going to schedule it for June.
Is there a possibility you could send out the information prior to the meeting so we can review it before we're here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I'll get it to you. You're talking about well in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll get it to you well in advance. That way you can be looking at it. All right. The next thing is I've got on here review of the results of the workforce study. We're not actually going to review that in depth. I sent that out to all of you well in advance, because that is voluminous. That's a lot of information to digest. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in that workforce study. I'm kind of turning into a data nerd in that I like to read that kind of stuff to see what's going on out there in the population. I'm always amazed at kind of the insurance questions the questions related to supervision, why you're not, why you choose not to be a supervisor, those types of things kind of are I'm just curious about. So if you've got any questions, I don't know how I can answer it, but it's kind of speaks for itself. This is just what the public is telling us about the workforce. But one thing I think we need to do, and I want to get on pretty quick, is I want to restart the workforce work group that I had before, so we can look at the results and see, is there anything about the survey we need to change or update? There's a few questions on there that have some open-ended responses, and I want to visit with that work group and see, is it really valuable to keep those open-ended responses? I think some of the open-ended responses are they probably maybe a little counterproductive having them open-ended. But I'm going to restart that work group unless y'all just have some objections to it. And we can start looking to see what, if any, changes we need to make to this thing and then get it relaunched. Now, here's my plan. And if y'all can torpedo it or whatever you want to do, but I think when we relaunch this thing, we need to do it for a full, like a renewal cycle, a 2-year renewal cycle, and not do it on an annual basis. One, doing it annually, I think people are going to get tired. They're going to feel like, oh, Daryl's sending out another survey again. Whereas if we do it on a 2-year cycle, I think it's just a little more palatable. It doesn't seem as intrusive on a 2-year cycle. Plus, that will also capture the entirety of the workforce for that 2-year period. And I would like to sync it with the biennium, the fiscal biennium. So in other words, if we do this first 2-year cycle, it really won't be a full 2 years. It's probably going to be about 1.5 years. But, be that as it may, we got to get on sync to 2 years at some point or another. So that's kind of my plan. We'll talk this over with the workforce group unless y'all just want me to do it on an annual basis. Okay, hearing no objections.
Right, I agree with you.
Okay. All right. So that's kind of the plan then going forward with that. Subject matter S or topic S is just some research update that TASS, the Texas Association of School Psychologists, has put out. That's always pretty enlightening because they do a pretty good job of telling us what's going on in the school psych workforce area, what the problems are. And then
still a real shortage in that area.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Big time. There's also a problem with retention in that area. John, I'm remembering right? A retention problem in that area, school psych.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah. We're having a hard time getting them. And
so, I mean,
in terms of burnout and other job opportunities. And when you look at these ratios in here, I mean, 1 to like 3,000 or more kids.
Yeah,
it's like, how is that setting up anybody for success? Kids or practitioners?
Right. And I would imagine that lately there's some compassion fatigue. It's emotionally draining, and particularly in light of
you look at that workforce survey, that's pretty clear real quick. People are like, I'm burnt out. They're like, all I do is listen to the people's problems all day long. And I do it for not a lot of money. And so I'm like, I understand. I mean, I get it. I'll be honest with you. It's a miracle. I think it probably speaks legions to the servant heart that most of our licensee population has, that we don't, we don't bleed more numbers than what we do, regardless of whatever regulations or statutes are in effect. I think it's probably a big testament to the servant heart of a lot of our people, but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, part of the issue too is they're just stretched so thin, and then there's these guidelines and deadlines that they have to meet. So then they just end up becoming like a testing factory that you just got to meet all the testing requirements. And so they're not really able to provide the mental health piece that like we really need as well.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. And then, one of the other things that I noticed from that, from the article is that like half of LSSPs they're not in the schools. They got an LSSP, but maybe they're in academia or maybe they're elsewhere. So like the numbers are misleading based on what you see on the license, the licensing numbers. So it's definitely a problem. I mean, it's underserved for sure. And I think the NASP recommended is, 1 school psychologist per every 500 to 700. And it's like, I think we're probably more around in like the 1,500 range or so. It depends on the area, but it's definitely an issue.
And so incentivizing that in terms of there's low pay, there are increasing fees, and then we add in the compassion component. And that presents a huge problem.
Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, not all the problems are within our purview or our jurisdiction to do anything about. But it doesn't hurt to identify the problems.
Correct. And then especially for those of us who are not professional members, it enables us to have a better understanding of what the professionals are facing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the last thing is going to be under 4 is 4T. And this is just an update, just to let y'all know that ARC, I forget what ARC stands for, Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality.
I'm shocked you don't know an acronym by memory. Shocked.
You got it right. Because it's in my agenda. That's the only reason I can read it. They basically, I had proposed, with y'all's permission, I had proposed a research project to them back in early 2023 after Mr. Blumen, Chair Blumenitz, and I listened to the director for that agency speak, and we anyway came back, proposed a research project. They have now fully and finally said no, we're not going to do it. We can't do it. So, but anyway, so that's dead. That won't be forthcoming. But anyway,
ventured, nothing gained.
That's right. I mean, worst they do is tell us no when they told us no. So, I'm not going to cry about it. We just go on. Number 5 is going to be moving on to, I guess, Chair, I'll let you take us into the next topic.
Oh, thank you. Item 5. 5A is reviewing and considering licensing and disciplinary recommendations from the member boards. And I think we have those with us.
We have one case before you. It is a case from the LPC board. It's the Duran case, Max Duran.
Duran,
yeah. Mm-hmm. That case has been to SOA. It has been to the LPC board, and it was a default at SOA, meaning that there was no hearing. The individual respondent licensee didn't show up. The LPC board has recommended revocation of the license. That's what staff are recommending. You guys have I'm sorry, Dr. Taylor, you got your hand up.
Yes, Madam Chair, in a point of order, I'll need to recuse myself from this as I was on the informal settlement conference team.
Thank you.
And Chair Canseco, you are also on that suspension panel as well.
That's right. So then I too, well, I don't vote,
Chair
do
Canseco,
I?
Janie Stubblefield was.
Oh, okay.
But I don't vote anyway, do I? I never remember that. Okay, then I'll recuse myself as well.
Yeah. So, I guess, can you take over chair duty since you're recused?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion or questions for staff regarding this?
I don't have any.
I don't have any questions about it. I've read it all.
Yeah.
Yes.
We need to check and make sure Mr. Duran is not on the list of attendees, because I believe he would get to speak if he wanted to.
Yes, you're correct, Chair Hobart.
Thank you, Chair.
My apologies.
If you're out there in the audience, go ahead and use the raise your hand function of the Zoom.
Is Mr. Duran or an attorney for Mr. Duran, any representative out there in the audience? Seeing none.
Seeing none. Okay. Is there any further discussion or questions? Are there any motions?
Chair or Acting Chair, I would like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation from SOA on the revocation.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say no. The ayes have it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, John.
Gavel back to you.
Okay. The executive leadership succession plan.
Yeah, with the addition, normally we would do this at the time we do my evaluation, but with the addition of Mr. Romig, I went ahead and drew up a modified version of that to get him in the mix should I get hit by a bus. So we got to make plans for that. So that's really the only change in the plan. Plus, I had to update some of the OAG and Office of the Governor contacts and that kind of stuff for you. If something were to happen, you all know who to get a hold of.
Right. Thank you. We appreciate that. Is there any discussion regarding the succession plan? Any questions or concerns? Does this require any sort of a motion, or can we move at the end of the action items?
I would better approve this.
Better approve.
Yeah,
okay.
Individually.
I move to approve it.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thanks. It's been moved and seconded that we approve it. Any discussion? No discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the revised executive leadership succession plan, please signify by saying aye, and those of you on the screen by raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
That looks unanimous to me.
Okay.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Next item
That
up
will
is-
be nearly as exciting as HBO's Succession.
If we're doing our job right, it won't be exciting.
Survey questions to be used when reviewing executive director's job performance. Do we have that with us in the packet? I know that you sent it.
Yeah, it should be in your or in your packet materials. Just the survey questions. It's basically, I'm just wanting to see, do y'all want to make any changes to the survey that your evaluation of me?
Any changes? Any suggestions?
Need a motion to approve?
Yes, please.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand, as the case may be.
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. The motion passes. Item D, the customer service survey.
Yeah, I've actually prepared you've got the customer service survey results. And then I've also prepared the customer service report that we're required to do. It'll actually be part of the strat plan, but I've gone ahead and done it. Need it approved, unless there are any questions.
Good. The strategic plan, is that right?
No, the customer service, the report on
Right.
customer service.
When you said that you'd incorporate it in part of the strat plan?
Yes.
Okay.
It will be part of the strat plan.
You know, Daryl, you really like acronyms and I really don't. All those in favor, well, do I have a motion to approve?
It's been moved to approve it.
Second? Thank you, Mark. Any discussion? If so, I'll entertain a motion. I'm sorry, it's motions on the table. Those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously, I suspect. I didn't see Janine, but I think that's, Janine, you were a yes, right? Okay, I couldn't see the hands.
And I'll tell you one idea that Robert and I have been kicking around is we may, in order to keep people from undergoing or having survey fatigue, we may look to see if we can combine the strat plan survey with the customer service survey this next go around, so that they can only take one. They only need to take one, and we capture all that information in one survey.
That sounds smart.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we're gonna take a look at that. Next,
just for the record, like just want to say, everybody watching, we appreciate so very much your participation in this, and we really do look at it and take it into account. So, thank you.
Thank you, John. The travel policy. There is a revised travel policy in place.
Yes. What brought this about was we're starting to see, as more and more agencies are returning to in-person meetings, you're seeing more and more of them get violation, get findings of violation in their audit reports for travel-related issues. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve here, and because I know that's coming. I know we're going to have an audit coming for travel or what they call post-payment audits or some sort of travel-related audit. That's going to come. And I want to try and learn from other agencies' mistakes or missteps so that we can avoid those same things. So that's what this is intended to do. I know that this is incredibly aggravating to you guys as board members and council members. I know it is. And I know Dr. Taylor would throw a shoe at me right now if he could, for this type of stuff. But we are genuinely just trying to keep us out of trouble with the SAO on this one. So that's what this is designed, the state auditor's office. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. I think it's worth noting, though, that the things that's tripping us up on this is that the contracting that the state has provided for this often is more expensive than what we can actually get by booking, not through, and I understand why we would not book through Expedia or some other third party group, but we can book cheaper directly with a hotel. And I have no idea why this the state's contracted vendor for this
drives me officially and clinically out of my mind.
So if there is any violations on this, it's not because we're going and spending more. It's because they're spending less.
Right.
We're finding opportunities to spend less directly. And then it also, and even with the exceptions in this policy that allow us to go utilize those cheaper rates, it just creates additional work for me.
It's busy work.
And that's not the state's problem if it is for me. It does when it affects staff, because that's actually staff and taxpayer dollars that are spent trying to save us money when we could have just done it easier directly. So
absolutely.
I just want that on the record that if there are violations, it was in the effort of actually spending, not in the effort, in the succeeding of actually spending less money for the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, here. Anybody else?
That kind of chair, that kind of dovetails what I was going to ask. Am I going to get in trouble if I just don't turn in one at all?
A travel, but
yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Like if you choose not to get reimbursement?
Right.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you kidding?
No.
Any dollar we can save.
That's called a business write-off.
But I will say that last year at this time, I got stuck in the hotel in that snowstorm, which was wonderful because I got all kinds of things done. But it was I think Daryl had to intervene to get my costs covered, if I remember right. And now it's 80 degrees. Dr. Taylor, I think I saw you about to say something.
Oh, I was just
as long as it's not a shoe.
It's definitely not a shoe. I was just going to tell Janina that was my solution as well, but I just don't submit the form.
Thank you.
Also, one more point of clarification. The new policy does allow us to utilize a cheaper rate if properly documented.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's wonderful.
That's important to note.
Yeah. If you can get it at a lower rate than what Hotel Engine allows, we can definitely go that rate. We just have to document it. Now, where it gets real tricky is if the rate you can get on your own is the same as what you can get through Hotel Engine. It would be easier to go on your own, but because it's the same, you have to go through Hotel Engine, which is a bigger pain.
Right.
So, go figure the logic there.
But if it is cheaper, booking direct, as long as it is documented or screenshotted, that the Hotel Engine, it costs more for not just a room in the area, but for the same hotel, same room, same hotel. Go ahead and book directly.
Go ahead and book directly.
Yeah. And that resulting in savings to the state.
Correct.
By not going through their vendor.
That's right.
I will say that the number for the flights, I forget the name of that, but that was actually pretty easy. So
the state travel agency.
Yeah, surprisingly easy. So
and to their credit, they're actually usually cheaper than what you can find.
Yeah.
Cheaper, or I've always found cheaper or parity with looking at flights.
It's the hotel thing is the big big pain. Sometimes they're cracking down too on like rental cars versus driving your own personal vehicle. Now they want like the cost comparison tab filled out on that worksheet. It's a lot of work now, and we'll talk about it later. We'll probably have to have some sort of training session. I think Jenny has kicked around the idea of doing like a training session with you guys to kind of show you how to use that worksheet and what all you'll have to do. But it's going to be much more difficult, I think, now as they're starting to crack down on agencies and the in-person travel. So
I can see that it manages abuse of certainly, but just the idea that Jenny would have to spend state paid time doing something so silly.
Yeah.
It's irritating. It's inefficient, and it implies a lack of trust, but I do understand controls. And so we just move forward.
All right. Move to approve it.
Yeah.
Yes. Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you so much. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye or raising your hands.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you so much. Where are we next?
5F.
F. The supervisory agreement forward by, I'm not even going to try, but STSBEMFT. I just remember it's Marriage and Family
MFT
Therapists.
board, yeah.
Right.
Easy way to say that one. Normally, I wouldn't bring form changes to the council. This one, this one has got some. I got some concerns about it, and I don't. What I don't want to do is, part of our job at the council is try to standardize things and simplify things as much as possible. And sometimes individual boards, obviously, they have their own directions they want to go, and that's all fine and dandy. But I mean, this is an area that it's really exclusively within the council's jurisdiction. This is not a board function. The applications, the forms, the paperwork, the processing, all of that is exclusively within the council's jurisdiction, not the board's. But the MFT board had a discussion, and they felt like it would be best if really the only change I'm concerned about is the one that's highlighted. If there was a statement put in the form that a supervisee can basically file a complaint against their supervisor if needed. Now, one, that's not a piece of data or information that is really needed to complete the form, but really what kind of when staff were looking at it, it kind of perked our ears up was after we just got done looking at all the customer service survey results about why people are not supervisors. And you start looking at those results, and one of the big things that they say is it's a liability concern. And I'm like, so now we're going to put a statement in here that it's going to have I don't say it's going to have a chilling effect. It seems like it would have a chilling effect for anybody who is wanting to serve as a supervisor. If in the form it says, hey, supervisee, something happens, you can file a complaint against your supervisor. Well, they should already know that if they passed the jurisprudence exam and all that, but that's what the MFT board wants. But I didn't want to do that without getting y'all's blessing on it, because again, I don't know how that's going to affect. It may not have any effect on supervisors, but I don't want to do that without running something like that by you guys, because that could change. I don't know how that's going to impact your licensing number, your supervisor availability. I'm just.
You think it would give the person completing that form pause?
I think if I'm looking at that and I'm the supervisor, it's going to make me think a little bit about, that's already the case. They can file a complaint. Right. But when you start putting that in writing,
saying that's a given.
Yeah.
Right.
And they may not like their supervisor and like they just may not have a good relationship. And it could be, well, that's a way out. Potentially could be a problem. I doubt that would happen like most of the time, but it is a possibility that it could just be used.
Janine, did I capture the rationale for why y'all wanted it?
Well, actually, the rationale behind it is that we were getting, when we're having to do our renewal for a supervisor license, we were finding that some of the supervisees were surprised that, number one, once you sign on with a supervisor, because we don't have any form that is consistent across supervisors, you kind of do your own, but nothing in there says, what are the rights that you have as a supervisee? Some of them were thinking that just because they hired you, because this is a paid position, they don't, no one's doing this out of the goodness of their heart. This is a revenue stream for people to do, to supervisee, to act as a supervisor. So some of our supervisees did not realize that they could A, switch, or B, what would happen, I'm at the mercy of this supervisor, because we have a power differential going. Anytime you're supervised, there's that power differential. And so this was talked about at our last or time before last board meeting, and it was decided to make it very transparent and clear that a supervisee does have a power, that they can get a new supervisor, that they can make a complaint, just like you could make a complaint against anybody. And so their feeling was, we had a situation with a supervisee that felt like their supervisor was becoming overly friendly. It was verging on sexual harassment. And they didn't feel like, until they were fully licensed, they were worried about blowback. What would happen to me? I'm just a lowly associate. I'm not fully licensed yet. is this going to be taken out on me somehow? It wouldn't, but they were worried about that. And so this was the rationale behind it.
Janine, my question for you is, when you say associate, when we began the discussion, I thought it was students. So people who must be practice under supervision for a while before they are officially certified. Is that right?
Correct. These are no longer students. They have finished with schooling. They have taken their national exam, and now they are having to do their 3,000 hours of supervised training. And
so part of the credentialing process.
Correct. Right. And they hire a supervisor. And this supervisor, there's not a restriction on how much you can charge your supervisees. You might get somebody that doesn't charge at all. You might get somebody that charges $600 a month. It's wildly different. And so this was a protection for a supervisee, just because we don't have a standardized form that a supervisor uses.
Do any other of the boards that we represent have the same situation? Are there any other, Patrick, whose supervisees have this kind of an issue, or even who use that function?
I mean, I think every board has got a supervisee or a supervisor file complaint against one or the other. I mean, that's occurred, generally speaking. So it's not unique just to MFT. Every single, we've heard it from both sides that this was a terrible supervisor, this was a terrible supervisor.
Right.
But oftentimes I think they did something illegal or unethical, and so they've filed complaints before.
So what strikes me, what I'm thinking about is, if a supervisee is paying for something like that, then he or she, I mean, here's the lawyer questions. He or she's purchased a service, the service isn't being delivered, but I can see where people who are associates then would be restricted by the cost and say, oh, well, I'm just going to complete this because after all, I'm paying $400 a month or whatever it is, and just I'm going to get through it. So I think where I'm going with this is, what do the other agencies do in order to encourage or make clear that a supervisor can file a complaint? Is there any other professionals that can?
Before you get anybody to answer that, Chair, I also wanted to let you guys know this kind of goes hand in hand with something else that we are proposing as well. We have also taken away a cap on we're proposing to take away a cap on how many supervisees you can have. Currently, we have it at 12, and it was voted on by our board to take that cap away. So this was to not lose out on, or not having it be horrible for a supervisee that is now with a supervisor that may have 20 supervisees. If we take all caps away, this kind of helps to, ensure that the supervisee is still being treated fairly. Dr. Taylor, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I do, but it's more of a technical questions, and I don't want to derail this discussion, so I can just circle back when you guys are done with this.
I was just going to say, I do know that, like, for instance, like the LMSWs will often pay an LCSW for their supervision hours. That happens all the time. So I mean, it's definitely, there's that paid, because we're talking about like almost like a paid position here, where this is the LMFT supervisor so that they can get their hours. And it does happen. I mean, it happens in other boards as well. I definitely see it on the social work board or in the social work realm.
And how do you manage making that clear to supervisees that they may complain? Do you just assume that they know that? Or anyone else have something like this?
I think that's all kind of in the ethical, handbook of how you handle those issues.
I mean, we're talking about individuals that are already licensees. An associate is a licensee of the agency. So they're supposed to have knowledge and awareness of the complaint process. It's kind of one of those, maybe we take it for granted, but you just assume that they know it because they're a licensee.
But it's not covered in any other place, though. It's not covered in the jurisprudence. It's not covered anywhere specifically. And yeah, you're 100% right. We're all just assuming that these supervisees know what their rights are. We assume that.
Right. Thank you for the clarification. Any other discussion?
So what do we need here? A motion to?
My question, if I may, is Daryl, it's more of an employment question. With this type of statement, I just want to make sure we don't step in anything we shouldn't be. The scenario I'm thinking through is like if somebody is employed at a hospital where they're required to have supervision from somebody at the hospital, would this statement create any issues surrounding a scenario like that?
It'll create a very awkward situation. If they file a complaint against that individual, the hospital's not going to know about it unless somebody notifies them.
Doesn't go through HR or anything like that?
No, because it's going to go to us and it'll be confidential unless either the complainant or the respondent notifies them about it. It could be problematic for the hospital.
What's your opinion, Mr. Hallbauer? You're an attorney.
This is limited to MFTs, right?
Right.
Chris, is this an issue on our side, or I'm trying to decide if the fact pattern here is unique to MFTs. I'm not sure that it is. Chris, have we had this issue?
I mean, in some ways it's apples to apples, but in other ways it's apples to oranges.
Yeah.
I mean, we based off of our complaint trends, I would feel confident in saying that associates are very aware of the fact that they could file complaints against their supervisors and have done so many times. So I don't know what that means as far as whose responsibility is it to let them know that they're able to do that or not. So I don't. Do we have a problem? I mean, I don't know what problem we're trying to solve for. I'm kind of unclear on what the actual issue is.
The problem is that they feel as though the associates they go into this relationship not having been properly appraised that they have the right to do these things.
Right.
So they're accounting for the power differential.
Yeah, and there is a very real power differential. I mean, that's very accurate.
I almost think it might be interesting if one board does this and sees an increase, then the question asked by that board, in this case MFTs, would be answered. You'll know. Have you gotten more complaints? It might be attributed to that. And it's something the other member boards could look at. I understand why it would give you pause. It might produce some interesting information. One board does it. The rest of us can feed off of what happened. Did you get more? Did you get less? Did you see fewer complaints or people feeling more open about the things that disturb them? Or did they hunker down and tolerate something they didn't need to tolerate?
I have a question for Janine and Daniel. Like Daryl mentioned early on when he was presenting this issue, he said, I'm concerned it may have a chilling effect on those that are willing to be supervisors. My question for y'all, coming from MFT and had this discussion on this, is this a trade that you're willing to make? And by trade, as in a possible chilling effect, less people willing to supervise in exchange for increased notice, increased awareness to the supervisees. Is that a trade that you're willing to make? Do you feel like you have enough good supervisors out there and you're willing to risk a few of them saying, this is just another thing that makes me less inclined to be a supervisor?
Yeah, Janine, can I ask a clarifying question, please? Do you have a supervisor agreement form at all, or you don't have one at all?
No, everybody has one.
Okay,
but it's not uniform. So mine could say something different. I mean,
you don't. I mean, like you don't have a formal one that's from.
We have a formal one that's through BHAC, but then when a supervisor signs with you, you have your own contract forms when your supervisee signs with you. Like right. I have mine that says what I expect out of my supervisees and what they can expect out of me.
Yeah.
But one for BHAC is one page that just, it's the same thing that almost everybody has. It's one page. It's very bare bones. It doesn't have rights on it whatsoever.
Got it. Yeah, we have pretty much the same thing.
Yes, it has. It basically has, hey, you've got to do it, and hey, you know, it has to be signed, and you know, just the bare basics to it. So I mean, go ahead. I
was going to say categorically, like I think it's fine. I mean, we do the same thing with patients. So, you know, I mean, there has to be a notice in the informed consent or the HIPAA agreement that you have a right to file a complaint. So, I mean, this relationship is very similar. It's not guarded under HIPAA, but it is very similar. So, you know, I don't see why why it would be a problem to state that you have this right. Is it a necessity? That's a different question, one that I don't have the answer to. But is it an issue? I mean, we're already kind of doing it with the patient relationship. So,
to answer your question, Stephen, the people, those of us that are on the board that are supervisors, did not feel that it would prevent anybody from signing up to do this, because we already kind of know we're responsible for these supervisees.
Okay.
So one more responsibility of, oh, they could put a complaint against us. We know it more than they know it.
Okay. So you don't feel as though, I mean, if we're analyzing the power dynamics,
I don't feel it's a barrier to people wanting to be a supervisor. I think that it empowers supervisees.
So your professional members that are on your board, they were all in agreement on this?
Yeah,
I mean, professional members that are supervisors on the board.
Yes, that's what typically happened. I know I'm a public member, but that's what happened when we had the discussion. And we feel it's less of a discouragement, you know, when it was brought up. Again, it's just like you're saying, you understand that, hey, it can't be brought upon you. And just like Christopher alluded to in their profession, hey, it's on the agreement. So it's like, it's not uncommon to be seen. So it's one of those, what we feel is, hey, we're just letting you know that it can, hey, if you need to, raise your hand. And like you said, it's to empower the supervisees so that they can feel like, hey, well, I know I can say something, and it's fair.
Yeah, we felt like this was just another area for transparency. That's how we looked at it.
Is there?
It didn't change. You know, it didn't change anything. They've always been able to do it. Yeah. This doesn't change the fact that all of a sudden they can. They've always had that power to do it. This is just a transparent measure to let them know. Instead of assuming.
If there's no other discussion, then
Chair, real quick, if I may.
Sure. I don't see. Is that Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, is there any value? Is there any value into breaking it into two sentences? One that says, "I know that I have the right to change supervisors at any moment," and then another sentence or another statement that states that I know that I have the right to file a complaint. So it doesn't seem like if they're going to change supervisors, they also need to file a complaint.
That's a good point.
Yes.
And when this comes up, when we actually get over to agenda item 7, maybe proposing that idea, Chris, at that time, that might be the best use of time.
Yes, ma'am.
In that case, is there a motion, or should we wait until we get to item 7? Maybe we make the motion to hold this item. How would that?
Just leave it on the table.
Yeah.
No action in that case, but
yeah, maybe take no action and wait until we get to item 7.
I don't know that I even need any action from y'all. I just wanted to know, are y'all okay with this? Because they are changing one of your forms, and they were, for all the concerns we talked about here. If y'all are okay with it, I don't know that I need any action from you now. If like Dr. Taylor said, we need to break that sentence up, I guess I just need to know how you want it broken up.
Dr. Taylor, did you suggest actually striking that last part, or just like, you know, I may file a complaint, or do you think it should be 2 different sentences? Because I kind of see like what, kind of going back to what I was saying, it just kind of says, hey, I can file a complaint. It kind of throws it out there like almost like suggestive in a way, not really suggestive, but to me, it just kind of comes across that it is there and that they can see that. I love the protection that it provides. And I think it is a all in all great idea to have this year. I just didn't know, like when you were saying to break it down, how would you break it down? Or would you strike that last part and that's implied? Do you know what I mean?
Thank you, Dr. Carter. No, I was just suggesting that, and I'm just asking the question if there's any value there. I'm not suggesting we do it, but just to break it in half because it's two different topics.
Soften it, right?
I see what you're saying, and I do think there's value in that.
Go ahead.
Happy, yeah.
If I may, I think about the purpose of our board is to essentially, all the policy making essentially originates at the member boards. I don't see it as our job to micromanage unless there's a compelling reason that we need to say no to something. Like if this is what MFT is looking for, I don't see saying no. I don't love it there, but does it come to the level of like I need to like opine on this? I don't think so.
But
I agree. The LMFT board's made that decision. They think it's best, and I think we need to respect their decision on that. And
let me jump in because I like where you're going with that. I would be in favor of BHAC sending it back down to the member board with the query of changing it to where it's in two separate statements instead of all in one. I think that there's a lot of validity to that, Dr. Taylor, and I would be in favor of that. So I would have no problem with BHAC voting down and sending it back to the member board with the query of that.
That having been said, then this board, I would entertain a motion. I hate that word turning it down to sending it back to the MFT board with consideration of the comments and the exchange that we've just had at this meeting. And then
I think,
does that make sense?
Yeah, I just think this board has much bigger fish to fry than the sentence structure of this form.
So accept it as MFT
I'm
proposes.
Totally fine with it as it is. I think we're nibbling around the edges, and I think our bigger problems that we have to deal with and far bigger issues and policies that we can do to influence the mental health practice, the quality of mental health practice in the state other than this.
Thank you, John. All right. If there is a motion, I'll entertain it now.
I'd like to make a motion that BHAC sends this back down to the MFT board with consideration of a change to the sentencing of the proposal.
Yeah, and just adding on to Janine's motion, I would even clarify it as we would ask them to consider removal of the word and separating that into two sentences to where we have a period right before and then it starts out the second sentence with if needed, because that does provide some clarification that you don't necessarily have to have both of those things.
So could one of you restate the motion, please?
I do not, because I think that's where we're getting into micromanagement. I think that it just is, I would propose that BHAC sends this proposed rule back down to the MFT board with consideration of looking at the sentence structure.
I will second that, Janine.
And let them decide on how they want to do it.
There's a motion and second on the floor. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand, depending on where you are.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion passes. Thanks. Thank you. And thanks for a good conversation.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. We are on rulemaking. And what time is it?
11:55.
11:55. Do you all want to take a 15-minute, 20-minute break, or do you want to keep moving forward?
Let's keep going.
Short break.
Keep going.
10 minutes.
Okay. How about a 10-minute break? Then how do I gavel out? What's the wording?
You just say we're going to
take a 10-minute break.
Yeah, standard recess for 10 minutes, be back at 12:05.
Right. We are going to take a standard recess. It's 11:55 and we'll be back at 12:05. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. It's, where did I put my cell phone? It's
12:07.
12:07. 12:07? Yeah, 12:07, and we're reconvening. Thank you so much for your patience. Okay, we are on to item 6, rulemaking.
Nope, we got 5G.
Oh,
That's the last
sorry.
thing in 5.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Item 5. You know what? And when I stopped, it's because I thought we were on item 6. So update on the quadrennial rule review plan.
I am going to hand that off to Mr. Romig because that is going to be the project that he is undertaking for us. So I'll let him update.
Fun.
Absolutely. Start my video. You can see me. You should all have this one pager in your packet. That's the proposed timeline. One of the things, so you all know, every agency in the state has to, by law, look at their rules every 4 years and confirm whether the legal authority and the underlying rationale for the rule continue to exist. This will be the first time opportunity for BHEC as a full institution to review all of its rules. There are multiple ways agencies choose to approach the rule review process. I'll tell you the bad way and tell you why we're not doing that. The not great way that many agencies do, often because they just don't have the bandwidth, is that they will put all of their rules up and they will simply readopt everything and move on. There's just not a lot of time and they have many changes. We are not proposing to do that. We would like to actually undertake a meaningful rule review. Now, what that means is that it is a lot more work and a lot more time. And so the schedule you sort of see laid out before you is that this will take a full year of effort to go through, partly because the rule review process allows you to, under statute, adopt, amend, or repeal the rules once you've gone through the whole process. However, like all other rule processes, to be transparent and fair to the public, if you end up wanting to change anything or repeal anything, the best practice is to do that after you've finished the rule review process. And so the overall arc that I wanted to explain to everybody is that we will go through the formal rule review process of reviewing all of the rules and deciding what needs to be repealed and what needs to change. We will then adopt everything to conclude the rule review process, and then we will immediately propose any modifications or repeal of rules so that each individual thing that's going to be changed or repealed is going to have its own comment period and own opportunity for the boards to individually vote on them and bring them up to the council and that council to individually approve them. And so it is a little bit more of a laborious process, but it means that nothing is getting slipped through the cracks and nothing is getting adopted without everybody being on board with it.
How does it align with what our member boards are doing, or how does that part work?
Excellent question.
Thank you.
Segues perfectly into the process we're going to use is that the first few months here is going to be a staff-driven process. We're going to go through all of the rules for each of the member boards and BHEC. We will be looking for statutory authority problems, legal problems, and operational problems. We would then like to propose that each member board use their rule committee to vet those problems that we highlight, and then to suggest problems of their own that they think substantively need changing. That would be in the April to May timeline for each substantive board to have a rule committee. Then this summer, once everybody has their next board and council meeting, we would bring the results of those to you at your June 25th council meeting and present you with here are the items that we think need to be repealed because they're statutory problems. Here are the things that we think have operational issues that need changes. And at that stage, just tee up for you as a council, these are what needs to be changed. Then over the summer, we would actually engage the public in that process. We would do a formal rule review posting. We would hold town halls. We would have all of that sort of on the table to say, here's what we're looking at changing. Does anybody have any feedback or comments before we even agree that we're going to change something? Then in your September and October board and council meetings would be after all of that, and we've gotten all the public input, we bring it back to you for a final approval that says, yes, these are the things that we're going to readopt. These are the rules that need to be repealed because there's no statutory authority. And here are the rules that we're now going to initiate an actual rulemaking process and propose changes and go through the normal rulemaking process that you always have gone through.
Could we feel like we've been going through every meeting for the last 5 years?
Yes.
Thank you.
And hopefully by the end of that, there will be a shorter list of rule changes that need to happen.
Sure.
Let's really condense them down.
Sure.
On the bottom of this timeline, I wanted to highlight these are the questions that are really going to guide our rule review process. Again, do any of the rules lack statutory authority? Have any changes occurred either in legal authority or in practice in the professions that mean the rule is now outdated and needs to be updated to reflect actual real life? Are there any operational problems that agency staff have experienced because of the rules interacting? And then the fourth and fifth question are really for the member boards to tackle with. It's not something staff can answer, but are there impediments, are there barriers to entry that are really unnecessary, that are above the amount of regulation necessary? Or are there any dangers? Are there gaps in rules that are creating an unsafe condition?
Sure.
So that is a lot. I do not expect you to remember all of that throughout the next year. I will be happy to remind you of the process. And I will invite and really wish for y'all's engagement. One of the question for y'all today of any action that you need to take today is just to make sure you're comfortable with this process as I've laid it out, and to think about as a council, is there any amount of input you wish to be giving, with the understanding that each of you that are coming from the member boards will be having the same input, the rules committee, the member board meetings to be weighing in. I think we as staff feel fairly comfortable that with the BHEC specific rules that are really the operational rules, we are comfortable taking the stab and bringing those to you in June. But if there was a desire on y'all's part as a council, not focusing on the subject matter boards, to have some sort of designated representative to work with us, or to have a quote unquote rule review committee, we can certainly do that. We don't want to cut you out of the process.
I would just like to say, Robert, I have complete faith in you leading this process. For the rest of the board and the public out there, Robert comes from Sunset. So this is what you're describing to me I would love for you to comment on this. It just sounds like you're going through this very similarly to how Sunset would have. It's for a kind of a different purpose, but the mechanics of it are not too dissimilar. Am I off base on that?
Absolutely. I've spent a decade now telling agencies how they're not doing rule review very well. So now I have to put my money where my mouth is and do it the best way I can.
I have the utmost confidence in you leading this process. Obviously, we're going to want to have a bite at the apple, I think, once you do your initial pass at all of this. And I think what you're doing really, we've kind of had to, slapdash is not the right word, but we've had to do it quickly in terms of how the legislature has directed us to do this. And we've had to do it probably without the necessary manpower. So the fact that we're getting to do this now with the right process, with the right manpower, and a very deliberate and protracted process, I'm very happy to see that we're doing that. So I would say go forth, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with. I think it'll be really interesting to find things that we may have done over the decades that may be lacking statutory authority, because we do that before we do any rules. Do we have the statutory authority to do it? With laws changing and court cases, it'll be interesting to see what, if any, how long of a list. I hope that's a short list. But if not, it'll be interesting to see what's happened over the years with Mission Creek, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone have any other discussion? I would agree. I'm curious to know, we have moved fast. I think we've moved efficiently and effectively, but it's a lot to take in, especially for those of us who are either not lawyers or not professional members. But we're very lucky to have excellent leadership, not just on this board, but especially at the staff level, to guide us through this. This is my first experience with this kind of public service. And so it's been honestly a lot of fun and very impressive. Makes me proud of who we are and where we are. So thanks. Any discussion, or would anyone like to suggest a change or make a motion relating? I think this is mostly an update.
Yeah, don't need a motion unless unless anyone feels like there needs to be a special committee.
I think we would slow you down, especially on this initial pass. So I would say go for it unless anyone disagrees.
Not at all.
Okay, looks like we have consensus. Then let's move on to item 6A, reviewing and considering different rule changes.
Madam Chair,
will you take that?
If I could, could we bump? I know Dr. Taylor has we don't want to run him afoul. He's got a conflict that may come up later on, but can we take the LPC rules out of order?
Darryl, we can do BHEC then LPC. That's fine.
Okay.
Is that a yes or a no? I didn't hear.
No, he said we can do BHEC and then move on to LPC.
Okay, as the first one after BHEC. That makes sense. Go ahead.
Yeah. So 882 is the only proposed rule that we've got here, and it is just it's meant to basically simplify the verification requirements. If staff can look on a government website or call the other governmental agency and verify that the information is correct, it doesn't make sense to, as we currently do, require the applicant to get written verification to then be sent through the mail or email. If we can just do it ourselves, it's just much quicker. And so this is just meant to expedite the licensure process. I don't see that it poses any risk to public protection. So, because I'm not just verifying it off Google. We're going to have to go to the actual governmental agency that has it and verified it through that agency. So,
and so the material changes, item C, 822C, is that right? The one that's underlined?
This is just a proposed, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the change that's proposed, right?
Correct.
And may I move to propose?
I'll second.
It's been moved and proposed that item C, 822AC be added to the general application file requirements. Is there any discussion?
Hang on, is this we're doing rule
882.2.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Did I say it wrong?
I don't know. I just wanted to make sure. I moved to approve or to propose it.
Good. And I think we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Okay. And the next one that we probably need to take just standalone is 882.23. It's a rule being considered for adoption. It is the rule that changes where we consider the practice of fill in the blank as occurring. It's the rule that would change it so that if your patient is in Missouri and the provider is here, the practice of psychology or marriage and family therapy is considered to be in Missouri.
Where the patient is.
Where the patient is. That will govern where the services are being delivered. It does not jeopardize or say in any way, shape, or form that somebody can deliver services in Texas without a license. That is not what this rule is saying. But it is meant to guard against those situations where we have refugees, if you will, from hurricanes move here and need to continue delivering services back home. They would not have to get a Texas license if their patient is in their home state.
And that rule covers all four.
Correct.
Boards.
Because this is a BHEC rule that covers all four boards. Now Patrick has developed a change in the rule where staff are recommending that we adopt it with the changes that are highlighted in yellow based upon public comment that were received. They are not substantive changes. They are clarification changes. And so we feel comfortable that we can do it. And so we're recommending that you adopt it with those changes indicated and highlighted in yellow.
All right. Move adoption of 88223.
Second?
Second.
With the changes or without?
I'm sorry. Thank you for clarification. With changes from staff.
Thank you. I think I heard second from the television screen. Thank you, Dr. Taylor and Mr. Hallbauer. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
The next four rules, Roman numerals 2 through 5, I think can be adopted in mass. There are no changes on those rules. Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong.
No change. No.
So we're just adopting as they were proposed in the Texas Register.
Correct.
Okay.
And was this, do we get public comment
Yes, we did.
on 88228?
882.28.
Yeah.
Let's see.
The one about the PhD requirement.
Yes.
88228C.
This is like the member of the public, Ms. Kimball, when she commented, I think she and several others are opposed to this rule, I think in its entirety.
The entire rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there any discussion? Any concerns?
Would there be any objection to take 88228 separately from the other four?
Any objection?
None.
Okay.
I'm staff. I don't get a vote. Do whatever you want to.
Then let's set 882.28 aside for the moment. And look at 883, items 3 through 5. Do you want to go through those?
1, 3, 4, and 5, correct?
1, 3, 4, and 5, correct.
Okay.
I thought we did. No, you already did one.
Yeah, we did one.
So,
I'm sorry.
Roman numerals 3
so
through
just
5.
3 through 5.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Sorry, just
anything that you want to bring up about these, Daryl? They're mostly clarifications. Is that correct?
Well, the fee rule, I think there's a change in there that we highlight that you can't do chargebacks on us.
Chargeback.
Well, people pay with a credit card or a debit card, and then once they get what they want, they do a chargeback, and then the money gets clawed back from us.
Oh my.
Yeah, we got to stop that.
Definitely don't want that.
Yeah.
Quite tacky.
There's also a fee for the rule that they're taking out of order, the PhD rule. So
okay. Yeah. Establishes a fee for that application.
So we don't want to establish, if you're not going to move forward with that rule, we don't want to establish a fee for a rule, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. So if we're going to do that,
take 28 first.
Okay.
Because that will.
Okay. That'll take care of it. Then let's look at rule 882.28 more carefully based on our public comments.
I just want to say this is John for everybody who can't see me speaking online. I hear the public comment on it. My only concern on this is I don't see the appreciable change to quality of service. I don't see how it appreciably increases the number of providers. And I feel like these are some of our main objectives. I don't want to, I'm either going to probably be abstaining or not supporting this. And it's not to pick a fight with the board. I appreciate why they want it. But I hear the public comment on it and I have a hard time disagreeing with it.
Any other discussion? Anybody else care to weigh in on this? All right, then let's entertain a motion whether or not to adopt the rule regarding updating to a degree on a license. Do I have a motion? Mr.
Sure, I'll make the motion that we adopt 882.28.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Dr. Taylor? Second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those opposed, same sign.
No.
2 noes. The motion passes with 2 against.
Now that does free up the issue of the fee for the application associated with 882.28. So I think now you can adopt Roman numerals 3 through 5 in mass.
Okay.
So Chair, I make a motion to adopt 6B, 3, 4, and 5 as written in the register.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, and this will take us to the LPC rules, of which there is only one.
MFT, number 7. Isn't it?
Yeah, I think we were taking LPC rules out of order.
Right.
In case Dr. Taylor has to jump off.
Okay, let me find those. And it's 884.
It's just 681.72.
Yes, thank you for that courtesy.
681.7. Got it. Thank you. Okay. This is an amendment that deletes the requirement that an applicant must receive a passing score within 5 years of the date of application.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
This rule, if passed, brings the LPCs in line to similar changes that psychology and LMFT has made, removing this 5-year deadline. There's no opposition to it from comment. What was happening is it was really tripping up, as Dr. Taylor had pointed out, what had typically happened it was tripping up our licensees someone who got pregnant and then fell outside of that 5-year window. And what we're doing here is bringing us in line with psychology and MFT, just removing that 5-year deadline for that passing score.
Thank you. Thanks. I had actually read it and had a hard time understanding. Appreciate that. Is there any discussion or questions?
I'm sorry, is this for proposal or adoption?
Adoption.
Okay.
Adoption.
Move adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the amendment regarding the
This is 681.72.
81.72. Thank you. All in favor? Did I ask for discussion? Yes. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Thank you. The motion passes. Now we are going back to
MFT.
7 or 6. Hold on. Let me get this straight. Yep. 7A, the MFT rule changes, and those are 801-143.
If I may, Madam Chair, I would recommend let's hold 143 until we get to that same rule under the adoption section.
Okay.
Because, well, I'll tackle that in a minute.
All right.
So I apologize. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
When does that, now that it's adopted, when does that 5-year deadline terminate?
Practically speaking, it'll end today.
Right. Okay. So somebody who's really coming up against it.
I'm not going to play some Chicken Little game and say, well, you got to wait 20 more days before I'll let you use that exam score. Or I'm not going to let somebody who's 20 days, the clock might run between now and when it becomes effective. We're not going to ding them for that.
Okay.
These types of rule changes, we don't play those games with. We just say, we're going to treat it as though it were effective immediately.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Not at all. 801.201 temporary license. Is there any grouping that we could do here?
I think you can do 201 and 261 together. Now, the one thing about 201 I want to make sure we're clear on is in order for us to actually implement the temporary license for MFT, we're going to have to make some database changes. So let me tell you what I'm wanting to do. If you guys vote to propose it, was it Patrick? We're actually going to hold off on proposing it until
there's a fee. We need to get the fee rule.
No, but just there's something else.
Until we can get the database, we have to do the proposal.
The config freeze has to come up.
And so, yeah, we wouldn't actually put this in the register.
Yeah.
Until the computer
configuration of the
out. And then there's also a fee proposal that will come to your June meeting. So probably we just wait till both of those, put them in the register at the same time.
At the same time. And that's 201 and 261?
Just 201.
Just 201.
But I don't want the MFT board or MFTs out there thinking we're sitting on our laurels and not moving on it. I want everybody to see that we are moving, taking action on it. there's just some practical considerations we got to clear up.
Creating new fields in the database in
Yeah.
order to allow for that. Understood. Any concerns or questions? Do I hear a motion to hold this until or do you need a motion to hold this?
Go ahead and propose it with the
Okay.
understanding that 201 will be held
Until June.
until those matters clear up. Then we'll go ahead and propose it in the register.
Okay.
So moved.
And are you also doing 261?
I thought we were. But John thinks too fast for me.
1 and 261?
That doesn't snag you, correct? Based on no, then yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Both rules being
yes.
Move for proposal of both rules.
Okay, and Brian seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Yes. Sorry. Oh, yeah. See, your hand disappears, Janine.
I don't know why.
It's at the bottom of the screen. Now I can see it. Thank you. I apologize.
That's okay. I just wanted to speak to the rationale behind our proposed rule.
Sure.
Based on what we have heard from the public, I really wanted to kind of address this. We have heard from the public. We understand their concerns because we've done a good job in the state of Texas making sure that our standards are at the highest of our field. We are also in very much alignment and working with the AMFTRB, which is the Association of Marriage and Family Therapists Regulatory Boards across the United States. If anybody out there in the public is listening, you can always go to that website. They have a chart that allows you to look at what every single state's regulations and requirements are across the state, so that we can easily see who's coming into our state, if we're going out, to make sure that the people that would come in to practice with just their clients, this would be for just their clients. This isn't to try to get a bunch of clients here in the state of Texas. It would work with somebody that they have been working with and that has come into the state for a medical procedure or their vacation house or whatever it is, that they will not have an interruption in their care. So that's the rationale behind this. And I just wanted to allay any public worry that somebody that's not qualified would be coming in.
Thank you. It's important. Any questions or concerns? I have a motion and a second on the table to approve items 801, 201, and 261. If there's no discussion.
I'll second.
Second. Then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Thanks, Janine. I saw your hand that time. Motion passes.
Chair, I'm going to abstain on that one.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to abstain on that one.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Hallbauer abstains. Let the record reflect that it was not unanimous. Close. Okay, 801, 261. Are we going back to 801?
801.2. I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and do 143.
Okay. Let me find that paper. Do you want to go through that with us?
Sure. All this is, you can see that the things in yellow were the proposed, the things in green are possible proposals. And so all this is a kind of a cleanup bill, basically. It is to make sure that within our rules, if we have a licensee that meets an untimely death or any reason that their practice is closed down, that they already have a plan in place to be able to have the custody and control of the records for each one of their supervisees or for their office practices.
On the supervisor requirements, I see that one thing has been strict, whatever, is gone, and the other is replaced. What is there a material difference there that we need to look at? Or is it strictly the cleanup that you're describing? Okay.
It's just cleanup.
Got it. Thank you.
The other difference is what I already spoke to, that this is a difference. This one is not the cleanup. I think that's what you were talking about, so I misspoke, Chair. And it is to take away the limitation of how many supervisees a supervisor can have. We had it at 12. We are taking away a limitation because we need more supervise. We have a lot more people graduating, and they need to be supervised, especially across our state and rural areas. So this is taking away what the cap is.
So here's how the motion on this, the most efficient way I think to do it is, if you're moving to adopt the changes in yellow, and you're moving to propose the changes in green. And if that passes, what we would do is we would submit the adoption changes to the Texas Register first. As soon as those cleared and became legal, we would then submit the changes to be proposed. So you're kind of doing it all in one move.
Adopt and amend.
Yes.
I'm not trying to be difficult here. Why? I mean, that's a complicated way that we've not really done before. Is it not cleaner or more simpler just to repropose? Argue with me here. Tell me I'm wrong. But
well, no, it stretches out the timeline for when the changes can be put into place.
But we still it's accepting a change that we can make sooner, but there's still a lot of changes that are the changes in green can't happen any faster.
Correct.
You're simply delaying the adoption of what's in yellow.
Correct.
With what I'm suggesting.
Correct.
Because the things in green haven't gone to the register yet.
Correct.
It's the delay, and also a practical, though potentially negligible, is the staff has had to respond to comments on the yellow and would have to respond to comments on the yellow if there were any. You'd be repeating that piece of the practical steps.
I almost find this confusing, and if I find it confusing, I'm curious from the board. I'm sorry, is MFT board. Is the public? Do your stakeholders have any issues with this? Is this confusing to the MFT public at all?
No, but maybe we're smarter. Not really. Not really. No, we haven't had any negative comment about that, John.
Realize the stuff in green hasn't been published, so that, I mean, apart from them seeing it in the board packets, they don't know about it yet.
Gotcha.
So that they wouldn't. There is nothing for them to be confused about, I don't think, yet.
Okay.
And by the time they see the green, the changes in yellow will have already been adopted, and they're already showing up in the rule text.
Mm-hmm. We were actually trying to make this a simpler, compressed, which clearly that did not work. So that was the whole rationale.
It's a complicated dance.
Right. But it could also be two separate motions. No.
You could.
Right.
It's just part of the problem because of the BHEX rulemaking structure, proposed stuff has to go to the board, then it goes to the council, and there's this very long, it's not as fast as it used to be under the individual boards. You can tackle stuff. So we're trying to shave some time off here.
Just as an editorial comment, if we're dealing with one rule, I would always prefer to see the changes all encompassed rather than doing two separate changes and two separate timelines to the same rule. That gets really kind of confusing. And if you don't have a color printer, you're hosed.
Yeah. I understand. I just know that if we would then have to, we don't know whether y'all are going to adopt the changes that are in yellow. So what do we put, what do we put there? So I mean, we're in a tight spot. Yeah.
I'm curious about, so 12 people at a time, you don't want that limitation. Is it like teaching a class? That seems like a lot of work.
That was based on the feedback that we have gotten from our members.
What's the max you've ever seen, or do we know supervised?
I really can't answer that.
I'm just thinking of, just regular classrooms. Okay, I understand. Not my area. Do I hear a motion one way or the other regarding the proposed amendment?
I would so move that we vote to approve the amendments in yellow and propose that the ones in green are proposed and can be voted on our next meeting.
And I think by accruement adopt, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Adopt the changes in yellow and propose the changes in green.
Right. Do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I support the idea of removing that limit on supervision. I think that's 12. I mean, when I think of 12, like, how did we come up with 12? Like, it's quite a round number. And is there any science to back that up? And again, there's one other editorial comment. If somebody's running a supervisor farm essentially and not supervising people adequately, that's not adequate. And that would be they have to, for which the supervisor can provide adequate supervision. So we would have potentially action there if somebody's doing that.
Right.
Running a farm.
It could be less than 12 and it would still be action.
That's correct. So I support it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, let's call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Sorry.
That's okay. Any opposed, same sign? The motion passes. Definitions. No, sorry, 801.2. Is that next? Yes.
You can do 1 through 3 and 5 in mass if you want.
1 through 3 and 5. So we would pull out 4.
Correct.
Is that correct?
You just did that.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Most of this is cleanup. Is that correct? 2, 4, 3,
no.
5. Janine?
Are we on adopted now? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
yes.
Sorry. I didn't know which one we were going to. And so what are we looking at right this minute?
801.2, 801.48, 801.142, and 801.305.
Okay, yeah. Whew. I was lost myself. Yeah, this is just cleanup stuff.
I like the schedule attached. I thought that was made it much easier to understand.
I know the change in 801.142 is wildly popular amongst the licensees.
Yeah. 4.2.
They increased the number of technology assisted hours from 500 to 750.
So, Chair, I'll move to adopt 7B, section 1, 2, 3, and 5.
Any discussion? Thank you, Brian. Any discussion? Janine, did you raise your hand?
I didn't hear a second, so I was just seconding.
Yes, thank you. John seconded. Thanks. I appreciate that. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. I don't know their words. Unanimous. Motion passes. Thank you so much. We're on to number 8. Is that right? We already pulled out the other one. Okay. There are no rules considered. And item A1, what is B?
B is adopted. The adopted rules for psych.
Great. Thank you, John. Your board's doing a great job.
Thank you.
Number 9. Nothing under.
Oh, hang on. Sorry, we have one. We have one to vote on to approve.
Correct.
And it's an adopted with the change, a non-substantive change, changing the word from course to program.
Oh.
On page 2 of that rule.
Okay.
Should be highlighted in yellow. For
yes.
you.
And so the gist of this is that this is one of those things that when we're asked to streamline our processes and make them better, there's always a concern about really changing standards and whatnot. And when people see things about opening up to different degrees, obviously it can perk up their antennas. This was kind of came out of something with California where we had somebody who was an LSSP or a school psychologist in California. And Daryl, you might be able to remember. I couldn't remember the exact thing that they didn't comport with our requirements. However, I mean, they were right degree. Yeah, right degree. It was like, but it was everything else was fine. And so this is a matter of getting people into our state who are practicing as LSSPs or school psychologists to be able to practice in Texas. So I'll defer also to our school psychologist here up on the board.
No, I mean, you covered it all, John. I mean, basically, we just want to, allow access for people that, have the credentials and the training that is needed for us here in Texas, and we want to be able to expand that to people who rightfully should be and are able to practice here, and not limit, those that just because of a title or something some kind of small title change in a program that's in a different state, that's limiting them. So, but yeah, you covered it.
Yeah, this is it seems like not much, but this is eliminating a pretty good snag that is snagging people from getting into our state to practice. So move adoption.
And I mean, we also, clarified that the training did need to be in the area of school discipline. So that someone with only experimental training couldn't come in just because, they have one thing that may say something in their training program. We just wanted to kind of make sure that they are getting that approved training. So it just kind of covers that basis as well.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, it does not amend the coursework, examination, or internship requirements.
Right.
So,
right.
So you have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, so the motion passes. We've already done. Yes.
I wanted to ask the psychology guys if we had an update on the EPPP Part 2 exam issue. I don't know if that's appropriate for right here or later on in our meeting, but I wanted to know where that stood.
I'll defer to the chair. Is this appropriate time to talk about that?
I'd say 11 is the appropriate time for that one.
Okay.
I look forward to your question.
Okay, I'll move it down to number 11.
Thank you. Okay, so we've done psychologists, PC we already did. So we're on 10 social workers. And it looks like we've got some changes. Is
well,
781?
781.323, we do not need to adopt. The social work board said if BHEC adopted 0.23, whatever.
882.23.
If BHEC adopts that, the social work board said, please withdraw 781.323. Mr. Francis also commented on that too during public comment, how he was not in favor of this rule, but because BHEC has adopted its rule, I think we need to just withdraw this rule.
And do you need a motion to do that as well?
Do a no action.
I think just take no action, and then Chair Brumley can report back that it was right. No action was taken on it.
Yeah, the rule we adopted earlier sort of supersedes what this do.
So the ones that are actually actionable now are 781.404, 412, and 501. And 404 has a minor change in it, an adoption with changes. Help me out here, Pat. Oh no, this is Robert. This one's yours.
This was just the intent of the rule, I believe, is to make it clear that when someone is a supervisor, if they are already being compensated by the institution that they're employed by to be a supervisor, that they cannot also charge a fee to the supervisees under the guise of supervising fee.
So basically no double dipping.
No double dipping.
Gotcha.
And just making sure that otherwise, if they're otherwise compensated already.
Can we put no double dipping into the legal lexicon?
I just have a question.
I do too.
While I agree with wholeheartedly agree with the purpose of that, can we legally, like if we're stepping into saying how people can and can't get compensated, how do we open ourselves up there, or do we?
I think the intent of what the rule is trying to say is you can't exploit your supervisee. Mm-hmm. And so it's not prohibiting them from making money or getting paid to do it. What it's doing is it's prohibiting them from exploiting them by saying, I'm going to make double money on you. I'm going to make sure I get as much money out of this arrangement as possible. So I'm going to get everybody that I can to pay me for this. And I think the board is saying is exploitive.
I think if we were saying we're not going to let you charge it all for supervision, I think you get in trouble there. Yeah. You got some issues there. But here we're just basically saying you can't exploit your supervisees by charging them for something you're already getting paid for.
Right. That phrase otherwise just allows that they already contractually are being compensated in some form through their employer to provide that service to up and coming LCSWs. So they're being paid on the front end, and we're saying don't also then ask that supervisee to compensate you in some way.
No, I agree. That would be highly distasteful and unethical, but I mean, is this an ethical argument? Are we doing this on the grounds of ethics, or because to me it seems
intrusive.
Yeah, it seems like stepping into a financial arrangement of which I'm not sure are supposed to regulate. I mean, I would imagine that if you're being compensated by some institution, I would imagine that based on the policies and procedures of the institution, that they would probably not allow that.
Does it intrude on the, we've talked a lot about the market on
free market,
Mhm.
anti-competitive market analysis.
That's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
the competition.
Yeah, and
it-
would there be limits based on the type of setting, like hospital to school to, so like would it differ from setting to setting? And
Right.
Get into like maybe different parameters around it. I don't know. Just a thought, but that did come to mind.
I just can't imagine every single financial arrangement and every type of employment agreement. I know that they are diverse and negotiable, and I guess my other question is this a problem? Like, where did this come from? Like,
well, it's currently a requirement right now, but the wording was confusing. And so the purpose of this amendment was to try to make it more clear.
Okay.
So
What was unclear before? Just the word otherwise?
the way it was written before is a council approved supervisor may not charge or collect a fee or anything of value from his or her employee or the contract employee for the supervision of services provided to the employee or contract employee.
So the substantive changes, the highlighted otherwise, and that
The otherwise is the new addition that we added. The underlined is the new language that was proposed. The otherwise is the adopt with change. Otherwise wasn't in the register, but it was to say otherwise to indicate that yes, you can
charge
get a
only
fee.
one way or the other.
You just can't get an additional fee.
I'm reading through your strikeouts again, and I see how that's very confusing.
The way it's currently written is more confusing
causes
than what it is.
Yeah, and
right
y'all
now.
are probably rolling your eyes at me saying, oh,
No,
now we got to talk about it.
It's a good question to ask because the ultimate purpose is to avoid exploitation of a supervisee.
Right.
And so that is really the main goal. So are we getting too far into the weeds with it? It's a good question to ask.
Sure.
And I don't know if
when you ask your question, my immediate thought was what you were asking is, do we have express statutory authority to do this, or are we relying on what we call implied authority?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an implied authority. I don't know that there's an express statute that says thou shalt regulate the contractual relationship between, but we obviously have the authority to regulate supervisors who are licensees and supervisees and to guard against exploitation. So we're implying the authority to do this.
Got it.
And it seems similar to a number of regulations that we have in the bar as attorneys in our billing practices. The medical board has for doctors billing. You wouldn't allow a doctor to charge a patient an extra fee in the exam room for, I'll write your prescription. You got to go buy the prescription, but you also got to pay me $10.
Right.
It's that similar sort of truth in billing, I think. I think it is not unusual for licensing agencies to have code of conduct rules about billing practices. I don't think it would stretch far outside the implied authority.
Yeah.
I feel like I hate the slippery slope argument, but I feel like I'm okay with this, but there probably ought to be a fence of no further of getting into that relationship.
Or maybe in the motion could be limited that way.
I don't need to. We're either going to approve it or not. The rules are going to stand on their face, so I'm okay without that.
Any other
wants to, obviously, but
sure. Any other discussion or concerns? I'll entertain a motion one way or the other.
Are we doing all four of those rules?
All
three.
All three. Yes, that 3 and 4. Understanding 2, 3, and 4.
Chair, I'll make a motion to adopt 10B rules 2, 3, and 4.
Thank you.
With
as presented.
With the adoption, with the changes on 404.
Oh yes, with the changes as indicated in Rule 781.404.
Now we're good to go.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. We're on to item 11, the reports from member boards, and I think we've got something to talk about. Can you tell us a little more about that PPP thing?
EPPP.
EPPP.
Yeah,
I keep
Chair
thinking of
Hallbauer,
payroll protection.
poking the hornet's nest here.
Yeah.
I just was curious about where things stood.
So you actually have the two best people up here to update you from the Texas side of things, because we Mark and I are going to Boston to the ASPPB, which is the Association for State and Provincial Psychology Boards, which is an amalgamation of all of us from sea to shining sea, the Canadian provinces, and a handful of territories. We're going up in, was it April, end of April? And it is their mid-year meeting. Their annual meeting is going to be here in Dallas later this year. The update, though, is really no change. We're just as much of a stalemate as we have ever been. I don't know what else to say about it than that. We're a complete stalemate. They do not want to allow any sort of extension or ability to make it optional. They have said the same stance is that you either adopt EPPP2 or you lose access to EPPP1. So, Mark, do you have anything else to add on that?
No, I mean, you just summed up, kind of, I guess, what the initial concerns are, but there's a lot of little caveats as to kind of why, we have some issue with it, and why just across the board, I think the public has issue with it as well. And we hope to hear more from the public. And I think in our next psych board meeting, we're going to sit down with some folks from ASPPB as well, right?
ASPPB is coming to our next board meeting. We invited them to give them the opportunity. And I was really careful with how we worded it and how, and I appreciate you asking here, because I can reiterate that. When you invite somebody to a board meeting like that, it can be either, we really want you to come down here and talk about it. It'd be a shame if something happened, And so that was not the tenor of the invitation. We really wanted to have the dialogue in an open way. If you looked at our last board meeting, the discussion we had, kind of even in my own head, was, do we have a sit down informally with them? And the limitation on that is you can't have a quorum. Otherwise, we got to post as an open meeting. But when you look at the engagement from my entire board, I'm looking left, looking right, and I'm saying, who's going to sit this one out? And the answer is none of them. I'm not going to make any of them sit it out, because everybody had an opinion and was really engaged on the issue. And so in that spirit, invited ASPPB and their senior leadership to come talk with us. And we're going to have a conversation about it. We're also having a town hall coming up. I don't have that date in front of me. March 6th. Thank you. We're having a town hall, and it's posted as a public meeting. It's, again, one of those things where, who am I going to ask to sit this one out? Whole board is completely engaged on this issue. And the other interesting thing too is that we all come at it from different places, but we seem to be arriving at the same pinpoint, is that we have grave and serious concerns about it. And I don't think any of us like being put in a box of feeling like adopt this or else. ASPPB is supposed to be, and they build themselves as something that's supposed to be reflective of the membership and the needs of the member jurisdictions. And the big irony with this is that we didn't get a vote on this. This was something that it's kind of like the idea of a referendum, like in California, where they put a referendum out to the whole people, versus the idea of, Congress goes and passes a law, we don't get to actually vote on it. What essentially happened is their senior leadership voted to approve this with, I would say, no one asked me if we could make it optional. And I don't think a whole lot of other people did either. So here we are. We don't really know what the alternative is. ASPPB, we're in a rock and a hard place, because if we don't adopt this, and if ASPPB makes good on their threat to remove access to the EPPP1, I'm looking down to my right here at our very great staff and legal minds. What the heck do we do? Because by law, we must have a test. And this is, EPPP has been since, I think, the 1960s. Mm-hmm. Since the 1960s, this has been the entrance exam. So to have that held over our heads, none of us take it lightly. But there is a solution here. We don't know structurally how we can adopt it. When you think about the hurdles of getting it past the political questions on my board, and then if you ask me if assuming that we come up here and you say, Chair Belamowitz, Chair Canseco says, Chair Belamowitz, what do you think about this? I'll be like, I don't know what problem we're solving for, and I don't know how to support it. And I've asked that over and over again. What problem are we solving for? What risk is there, with unqualified practitioners that we've seen? And we haven't. We've seen very qualified people coming out of our schools and coming into licensure. So that's where we are. But the one solution could be is if ASBPB could allow us some accommodation. We've one of my other board members, Dr. Becker, mentioned sunset. This would be a great time when are we up for sunset again? 2033, which is, in terms of legal and legislative terms, that sounds like a long time away, but that's practically tomorrow. Right. That would be a great time for the legislature to weigh in on this. But for us to adopt something that creates another barrier to entry at a time like now, it would be 180-degree about face for everything. I feel like this board, my board, this agency, this staff, everything we've been working towards to expand access and get more people into this profession. So that is where we are, and it's quite serious.
It's not a position that any of the other boards want to be in. I will tell you that.
Are other states' psychology boards pushing back on this as well, or just us?
It's not just us. It's a really great question. It's not just us, but when you think about, I'm just going to pick on some small states. Like Nebraska or the Dakotas. Mm-hmm. What leverage does a state with a population that small and practitioner counts as small as that? Like, practically speaking, like what leverage do they have? And the answer I would say is probably none. Now they may love it. I don't mean to speak for those states.
What about other stakeholders, John, in terms of organizations representing
TPA came out, Texas Psychological Association came out at our last meeting with questions about it. I don't want to pretend to speak for them.
Sure.
They put their comments on the record, but I think a fair assessment would be from them to tap the brakes. However, there's grave concern about what's the alternative. And I think I can't speak. I can't assess their opinion without noting that we're all concerned. What's the alternative? We're very concerned about having none right now. And so that's where, the idea of making a test is quite scary. Mm-hmm. And that's where where I feel like the legislature needs, this is one of those things that we have a certain amount to do with this, but being a statutory requirement to have a test, we've had the EAP piece since the 1960s. I feel like the leg should weigh in and say, yeah, we're going to have our own test, and here's the budget to do it. And we don't like being pushed around by another unelected agency.
Agreed. To me, the most egregious part of this is being dictated to. That's not how we function in this society, or particularly in this state. I've got a lot of state pride, but I'm very bothered by there being no alternative. I'm very bothered by being bullied, and that's what it feels like to me. And frankly, I might have adopted that, for lack of a better expression, mafia-like tone. I'm impressed, John.
I would say person to person, like they've been very. We've had really good dialogue. So I've worked very.
If I were let's talk again about a power differential. If I were in the upper position of a power differential and you didn't have an alternative, I'd be kind as well.
Yeah.
I'd be soft-spoken and I'd be schmoozing because I know what I'm going home with. Right. I really don't like this. I would like this brought to the attention of the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of the Governor as well. I don't think we should sit back. And I think our legislators need to hear from us one way or the other as a board. Maybe that's being too forceful. I understand that this is affects the psychology board. I think as a board, we need to weigh in.
I think
I'm kind of mad.
I can tell. I think what we need to do, just as far as steps go, we need to wait and see how the town hall shakes out, and then the April 11th board meeting that you have. that meeting with ASPPB, because depending upon how that comes out, that is probably going to affect our strat plan and our legislative appropriations request. If we have to start looking for a backup, if we feel like we are not going to have the part 1 as an option because we cannot adopt part 2, then we need to be talking to the legislature about here's what it will take to develop a test. And that's what we would use the LAR process for.
So, and on that note, I am sending a letter this week to training directors from across the state and academics in this field, because I was thinking about who knows about testing, and I was thinking the college professors know how to test their students when they're coming out of their doctoral programs. They'll know, at least they'll have very educated opinions to help guide this discussion. Whether or not they have the answers, I don't know, but I absolutely believe that they will be valuable. So I'm sending a letter to them, inviting them to participate in this as well. I think this agency, the state needs that expertise. It exists in the state, and we just have to get everyone to the table.
How can this board support you best?
I think what you just said is a great help. Because we're not going to be able to solve it alone. If we really are in this corner, and if ASPPB really is intent on not blanking, we will need the help of our legislature and funding to there's a price to that. There's a price to saying we want to do it. We're not going to go along. There is a price to that, and it will be a lot of work. And I'm sure we'll have to hire and outsource, and get the right minds involved. But
for all those who are listening now, representing partnerships, alliances, groups, different NPOs that are non-governmental entities that are involved, if you need more information, I encourage you to look at the psychology board's last meeting. I'm guessing the minutes are up by now. I would encourage you to speak and to begin something.
Yeah, we had a very robust discussion, I think, for the first hour last time. So
great. But there may be folks represented here or listening today that don't traditionally listen. I'm very interested in stakeholder support, especially from those representing large groups of our professionals. Behavioral health and mental health are critical for our state and indeed across probably the world. And we don't need to be dictated to in this country.
Yeah, I was going to say involvement, though, this town hall we have coming up on the 6th, March the 6th, the town hall we have coming up. I'll be here in Austin for that. Most of the board will be participating remotely, and you will be able to participate remotely, or if you're in Austin, you could come give comment in person.
I'd love to attend as well.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other reports from member boards? After that, lively one.
Top that, y'all.
Definitely can't top that, but I did want to say the MFT did have another town hall meeting after the BHEC board last time. And if your boards don't do this, I would encourage you guys to do it. It's a way to interact and answer questions from your stakeholders, from your licensees. Every time we do this, we're able to let our licensees know what we can do and what we can't do. Kind of what's in our purview, because some of the things that people bring to us or make complaints to us, we really don't have jurisdiction over that. And helping to guide them in the right direction so they're just not beating their head against the wall is super helpful in a non-formal platform. So it turned out really, really well. We just met in January. Our conference is in April, and that's really about it. But John, whatever you need from MFTs, let us know, because we have been the ones that are out there fighting by ourselves on a huge issue one time, and no other board gave us an amicus brief or did anything. So I know what it's like to be alone like that. And I'm glad that all of us on the BHEC board are united on this, because it always starts with one and then can always domino down to everybody else. So I want to say, we got your back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janine.
Very appreciated.
From the social work board, I guess it was in August of 22, the Association of Social Work Boards, which produces the test that social workers are required to sit for, produced an annual report for the first time that gave a breakdown based on demographics of who was passing the test and who wasn't as successful on the test. And that created a lot of nationwide blowback against how tests are created, and you know, they have to meet all these certain criteria. And it was very enlightening to listen. We did a town hall after that to get feedback. There's not been any changes because, as Mr. Francis from NASW puts it, we're caught between a statute and a hard place. I mean, we're required to have a test, so that's the only one that exists at this time that we're know about. So we continue to use it. They have made some. ASWB, the organization that produces, did make some soft changes that allow for free products to help individuals pass the test or study better. There are also some other proposals across the nation to look at that, but it's not exactly the same issue, but it's one in which testing is being looked at across the board, I guess, for everything.
It's interesting. You said that they do it for free?
No, they produce some training materials that are free. Test itself is not free.
No, but they do training materials for the test.
Yes,
that are free.
Yes, they do training materials, and they've started providing universities with some access to materials that are free that they used to charge for. So they've made a lot of steps to try to encourage people to study more differently.
So, and that's interesting for coming back to what we're dealing with. ASPPB charges for the practice tests. And they've touted, I don't understand why they tout this. Somebody will probably explain it to me later. The fact that they're touting to take the practice test, it's a lot easier to pass. So, I mean, that stands to reason, but they showed a very high correlation with success with that, but they do charge for it. I was curious, the other thing you mentioned about the test, not the reason why they're given free assistance. What did the demographics, or what did they see in the data in terms of who was passing and who was failing the exam?
White females pass at the highest rate, white young females. But then you look at the social work demographics, it's 90% female. So, but the older you are, the less likely you are to pass the test. The lighter your skin tone, the higher likelihood to pass the test. And that was pretty much it. They didn't go into much else.
That's another, I mean, I think very valid concern when we talk about occupational licensing as a whole. There's so much data, and that also is corroborated with other data out there that increased standards for occupational licensing disproportionately affect immigrant and minority populations.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, thank you.
Because in this case, the educational attainment would be pretty much standard. You have to have a particular educational attainment to take the test in the first place,
that's exactly right. You have to have a bachelor's or a master's degree.
Okay.
John, with ours, when they went through and looked at our national test, they determined the same thing, that people of color were not passing it as readily. And further study also showed that one of the reasons is they may be in a different socioeconomic bracket. They may not have enough time to study for the pre-test, but they also give free pre-test as well.
Well, that's great that they're sharing the data. We're having a hard time actually getting the data from ASPPB, and there have been a lot of people who have asked for it, and we're having a hard time with that.
And that's what we learned too, that ASWB was asked for this data for years and years and years. And then when they produced it, they sort of touted it, hey, we're the first. So,
and I mean, seriously, like, kudos to them for doing it. I mean, if we have a problem, we need to look at the data to figure out how we can solve it.
Right.
Anybody else? Member boards, any other reports about your profession, your regulatory agencies, functions, anything? Those of you who are new, I would have traditionally reached out to you ahead of this meeting, and I apologize for that meeting, for not doing that again. Welcome. I think that we've got our marching orders. This has been a successful meeting. Daryl, what is the date of the next meeting? Is it March or June?
June.
Oh, good. I wonder why I thought it was March. Okay, good. June 25th. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a move to adjourn.
So moved.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you all for being here today. It's 1:17 and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
everybody.